Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back at it, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Welcome back. We're going to have a very spirited discussion, conversation about an issue, and of course, in African history and Black history that typically touches close to home, and that is, of course, the transatlantic slave trade. As we know, there have been numerous theories, ideas, concepts about what happened, why it happened. And so we're going to have a conversation about that. But before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. We got to get 100 likes tonight. So we definitely going to take care of some business. But before we get started, I also want to mention, I would be remiss in my duty as a Pan-Africanist if I did not mention this, of course, Black history fact. And that, of course, is that on this day, in 1796, we're talking about September 28, 1796, the Black nationalist, abolitionist, anti-slavery advocate, David Walker was born. And as many of you who are unaware, David Walker was one of the first to write an African-centered critique of anti-Black racism and discrimination, and of course, a quest for liberation. Was written in the early 1800s, if I remember correctly. I believe 1830. It was entitled David Walker's Appeal to the Colored Citizens of the World, particularly in the United States of America. So if you haven't, please go out and get David Walker's Appeal for the Colored Citizens of the World. Also, if you haven't, if you're unaware of who David Walker is, make sure you do a little Google research, find out who David Walker is. I can recall in one of my first Black Studies classes, I learned about who David Walker was and, of course, why he was important. So we know we always want to uplift the names of our ancestors when we come in to have a conversation, but also as the Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer taught us many years ago. And we know Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer was, of course, one of the co-creators of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And she taught us to never forget where we come from and always praise the bridges that carried us over. So we definitely want to make sure we praise that bridge, which is, of course, David Walker. And of course, we always want to highlight his seminal text, which of course is David Walker's Appeal for the Colored Citizens of the World, particularly in the United States of America. Also, before we move forward, we got to cover some of the ground rules. As you all are aware, little parts real quick. Some water. So as you all are aware, facts over feelings, right? You are not allowed to use a racial epithet of any kind when speaking of a Black person, African person, irrespective of their geographical location or where, of course, they geographically originated. So we're not going to get into that in any way, shape, or form. This is a Black empowerment initiative, of course, that we have here at Lumumba Speaks. And so we don't allow anyone, for any reason whatsoever, to use racial epithets when we are speaking of or describing or talking about any of our brothers and sisters, irrespective of where we are in the world. As we know, this is a Pan-Africanist frame of reference and way of thinking. Also, as you all know, if you provide information that is patently false, I will cut you off, right? So listen, we're going to have a conversation that's really going to be rooted in history. And so there's a push. I'm going to ask that if you provide some commentary that you're able to substantiate the claims you're making and make sure that they're historically accurate. Once again, as many of you are aware, I'm pursuing my PhD. I'm a junior scholar, as they say in the academy. And so it would hurt my credibility if I was allowing anyone to come on my platform and just spew information that, of course, is patently false. And one of the reasons why we're doing this show today, the transatlantic slave trade, is a lot of questions want to be answered. Because as we know, the Woman King movie premiered, I think maybe a week or two ago. And of course, it was extremely entertaining, but for most part, it was ahistorical, particularly the storyline. And so I got people to having conversations. As many of you know, if you were in the Black community, if you worked in the Black community, when the conversation regarding the transatlantic slave trade comes up, unfortunately, oftentimes people rely on speculation, conjecture, and even hyperbole to explain what took place and, of course, why it happened. I've heard things such as, well, we sinned against God, and this is why this took place or transpired, or there was a benefit from it because we came in contact with God, right? God used white people to introduce us to Christianity. All types of ridiculousness, even claims that we aren't really African. I've even seen some actual cartoons on social media where individuals were stating that actually Africans were selling Hebrews into slavery, which we all know, if anyone's done even a cursory review of course, the literature on this very sensitive topic, we would know that as that's an ahistorical claim. But once again, we're going to have this conversation. So I'm going to put the link in the chat. Once again, as I stated before, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and then we're going to get this party started, as they say. And we're going to have a conversation about, of course, the transatlantic slave trade. There are lots of questions. What are the answers? But also, very quickly, I would behoove all of you to please visit my website, LumumbaSpeaks.com, of course, the Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. My two most recent publications are on the site. So please, 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 I would argue you would be remiss in your duty, of course, as a subscriber, if you didn't visit a website and, of course, review my latest publications, Why I Am Critical of Critical Theory, where I examine critical theory and its unwillingness to center the work of scholars and theorists outside of the Western European sphere of influence, particularly the work of late 19th and early 20th century Black scholars such as Dr. Anna Julia Cooper, Dr. W.E. Du Bois, and of course, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Last but not least, also Travis Hunter and the Move Toward Black Power. But I incisively examine a top football prospect's audacious flip from a major NCAA football program to an HBCU. We're talking about from Florida State to Jackson State. Its historical antecedents and how it may be a catalyst for future, of course, empowerment. So please visit LumumbaSpeaks.com, review my publications, and of course, a lot of other information that I have on my website. But please let me know what you all think about these two, I believe, seminal articles that I've written in the past 6 months. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and open things up, and we're going to have a conversation. Once again, the link is in the chat. Make sure you hit the like button about the, of course, transatlantic slave trade. So one thing I want to state, of course, as many of you are aware that watch my channel, I have a background in Black studies, African-American studies, bachelor's, and of course a master's. So I took classes on, of course, the transatlantic slave trade. And so one thing I want to state, and I would behoove everyone, if you aren't in college, if you haven't gone to college, or if you're thinking about going back to college, consider majoring or minoring in, of course, African-American studies. In some universities called AAAS, Black studies, or even Pan-African studies. But I will let you know, it is a reading-intensive academic discipline. I'm going to say that one more time. Black studies, Pan-African studies, African-American studies is a reading-intensive academic discipline. You're going to read, and read some more. And typically, the only way you are able to learn the history is by reading the scholarly literature in the text. So definitely want to behoove everyone to, of course, if you want to go back to school, if you haven't gone to school and you're considering it, major in Black studies. And there are a litany, of course, of job opportunities for someone who has a Black studies major. Many people would argue that why would I major in something like this? I can't get a job. That is false, right? So just want to make you aware of that. But also, I think it's very important that we uplift our own. We know that Black studies, of course, is one of the only academic disciplines out there, say the only academic discipline that was created, not for the sake of simply creating knowledge, but for the sake of actually serving and helping the people, right? And so that's one of the things that distinguishes Black studies, AAAS, or Pan-African studies from other academic disciplines. It isn't simply knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's knowledge for liberation's sake, right? So definitely, even if you're not planning to go back to school and get a degree, I would push everyone to, at the very least, once again, at the very least, take a course, take a class, and I guarantee you, of course, you will walk away a changed person. So with that being said, we're going to get into it, having this conversation about the transatlantic slave trade. There's lots of questions. So what are the answers? So the first question I would throw out there is, can anyone tell me the origin, what historical global event culminated or resulted in Europeans traveling to the west coast of Africa? So of course, this would take place in the 15th century. I'm gonna put that out there. I hope the link is in the chat if you want to join in and be part of the conversation, or you could post, of course, your answer or question in the chat. But the question I'm posing is, what historical event that took place in the 15th century, so we're talking about the 1400s, culminated with Europeans traveling to the western coast of Africa? What, particularly West Central Africa, we're talking about Sao Tome and Principe, and we're talking about Western Europeans, starting with the Iberian Peninsula, individuals from Portugal, Spain, then of course, so on and so forth. So that's the question. And so definitely want to get some answers, because I think it's important when we have this conversation, right? We're laying the groundwork, we're setting the context. But also I think it's very important that we understand that these issues are extremely nuanced. There are a number of variables at play when we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, which of course was an unfortunate incident for millions, of course, of our ancestors. And so and we know, unfortunately, that period, that crossing of the Atlantic Ocean, of course, became known as the Middle Passage. The European countries went through a disease that wiped out a large portion of their population, so they were looking for a new territory to conquer. That is false. Bag 761, tap in, brother. That is historic. That is ahistorical, but tap in, and and we can have that conversation. And want some more people to tap in, definitely. Make sure you hit that like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. But great answer. I thought the same thing until, of course, I read the scholarly literature, but that is not correct. But definitely want to get some people to tap in so we can have a robust conversation about a very sensitive topic, of course, in African history and Black history, and that, of course, is the transatlantic slave trade. There are several questions, numerous questions. There's a litany of questions, even millions of questions. But we need to get to some of the cold hard facts, and that is, of course, what are the answers? So I'm going to give a little bit of time, then I'm going to respond to Brother Bag. Hopefully you could tap in. As everyone knows, you do not have to cam up to be part of the conversation. I'll say that one more time. You do not have to cam up to be part of the conversation. You can simply tap in, keep your camera off, and you can engage in dialogue. So I'm going to give it a little time, and then I'm going to hit the road, Jack. So I see Brother Bag is tapping in. Brother Bag is tapping in. One of 2 or 3 more people to tap in, then we can really get it popping or percolating, as they say, right? So, but I will answer this question. So I understand the frame of reference where you're coming from, Brother Bag, but the reality is what ultimately led to the transatlantic slave trade was were Muslims conquering what was then the city that was then known as Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul. When the Europeans conquered Istanbul, if I remember correctly, in the mid 1400s, I believe 1453 to be exact, but don't fact check me on the exact date because it's been a while. Going to, of course, Eastern Europe became unsafe. So if you are unaware, Western Europeans were enslaving Eastern Europeans in the Mediterranean Sea Islands. And of course, they were having them grow sugar, coffee, and other things like that. And so many people may be unaware, but the term Slavic speaker comes from, of course, slave, right? So as a result of the Muslims conquering Constantinople, and we know if you've been to Istanbul, Istanbul straddles 2 continents, Asia and, of course, Europe. So it became very dangerous for Western Europeans to travel to Eastern Europe. And as a result, they began to travel down the west coast of Africa, the west coast of Africa. And the other issue was that we all know about Mansa Musa, who by many people argue by legend was the richest man in world history. He was, of course, was the emperor of the Mali Empire. And as a result of his Hajj that he took to Mecca, he just spent so much gold that many individuals in Europe became aware of who he was. And in fact, there were even maps in Europe that depicted him in West Africa and what's known as Western Sudan, holding the golden nugget. So those are the 2 historical issues that led to ultimately Europeans coming to West and Central Africa. Brother Bag, what do you say to that?
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine, brother. How are you?
Excellent. Well, I thought that there was, I know that there was a plague, I think during the 12th, 13th, or 14th century.
Yes.
That,
Bubonic plague,
that
also known as the Black Plague. Absolutely.
yes. And from my understanding, that I'm not saying it was the reason, but it was part of the reason that they needed uh, to rebuild their country, financially, and to explore new territory to see what they could get. I don't know. Maybe I didn't understand that right, but what
Mhm.
do you think that also was a part of it, or?
Well, I would say from the courses that I took and the literature that I read, that was never even mentioned as one of the reasons. The reasons that I, from the scholarly literature that I read, and I have some here sitting right just to my right, was, of course, what took place in what is now known as Istanbul, but was then known as Constantinople. And the thing is that at the time, they were enslaving Eastern Europeans to serve their needs, right, in terms of exploiting people, so on and so forth. But once the Muslims conquered Istanbul, it became extremely dangerous for them to, of course, travel to Eastern Europe, because we know that the Muslims had taken over Jerusalem, and the last Holy War, the Europeans got their asses kicked, right? And so that was the reason why they sought to travel to the west coast of Africa. Yes, sir. So, of course, we're having a conversation.
I didn't.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I lost you for a minute.
Okay. What was the last thing you heard me say? I think you're tapping in and out. Can you hear me? All right, so we lost Brother Bag, but I think we're going to get him back. He's probably going to tap back in. So once again, if you just tapped in, we're having a conversation about the transatlantic slave trade. As we know, there are several questions, but of course, what are the answers? Doing this, decided to have this conversation because, as many of you know, the Woman King movie was released maybe a week or two ago. And so it really got the conversation going about the transatlantic slave trade, what actually happened. And so I think it's important that we have this conversation. For many people, there's a lot of conjecture, a lot of misinformation, even hyperbole that takes place in terms of when people have a conversation about the transatlantic slave trade, why it happened, why this took place, of course. And many people even made the argument that we were cursed by God, right? It's something as ridiculous as that. So definitely want to have a great conversation about this. And of course, I'm centering myself, of course, in this conversation because, as many of you know, my academic background, of course, I was able to read a bevy of scholarly literature on the history of the transatlantic slave trade, which, of course, as you can imagine, is rather interesting, but at the same time, oftentimes very difficult to, of course, swallow. So with that being said, I hope Brother Bag is able to tap back in. The link is in the chat. I'll put the link in the chat one more time if you want to tap in, be part of the conversation. As I stated before, you don't have to cam up. You don't have to come on camera. I know it's about 9:30 here on the East Coast. And so if you're on the East Coast, you might be ready to lay it down and, start your day tomorrow for work. So, but you could tap in. You don't have to cam up and be, of course, part of the conversation. I will say this, that African people, Black people, unfortunately, oftentimes are the only people who are blamed for their Holocaust, right? And I say that because it's a reality. We're the only people who are blamed for our Holocaust. We know, we look at the German Holocaust, the German Jewish Holocaust, that there was a Jewish council known as the Judenrat. And you can fact check me on this. This is historically accurate, right? As you all know, Black Studies is an interdisciplinary major, right? And so you take courses from different academic disciplines such as religion, history, so on and so forth, sociology, anthropology, so on and so forth. And so with that being said, what ended up taking place was Jewish scholars have even stated they would not have been able to round up Jewish people and siphon them into the ghettos and Warsaw and other places and even send them to concentration camps if it wasn't for the Judenrat Council helping the, of course, Nazi administration. So we know whenever you have oppression, you have basically three particular groups: perpetrators, collaborators, and then the last but not least, victims. And we know the masses of our ancestors were the victims, of course, of a horrible tragedy that is, of course, the transatlantic slave trade. And I actually personally don't even like using the term trade, because oftentimes people, can just argue that trade is it was just business gone bad with collateral damage. But we're talking about something that was a morally monstrous crime against not only humanity and human peoples, but a crime against human culture and, of course, human possibility. As Dr. Milana Koinga stated brilliantly many years ago, he said, we're talking about songs that will never be sung, art that will never be created, and poetry that will never be heard, due to, of course, he argued, Europeans having the capacity to destroy and not having the moral restraint not to. So with that being said, of course, I said we got some more people in the building. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. We're having a conversation about the transatlantic slave trade. As we know, there are several questions. What are the answers? And so please tap in, or if you don't want to tap in, you can put your questions in the chat about the transatlantic slave trade. We're talking about what happened, why it happened, and some of really looking at the historical context of what truly transpired. As we know, there are numerous theories, some ahistorical, some partially factual, but not considering all of the variables and factors that played a role, of course, in the transatlantic slave trade, where many argued that between 10 million and 15 million African people were displaced from Africa against their will and forced to disembark to the Western world. So definitely, if you could put your questions in the chat or tap in and be part of the conversation. Once again, you do not have to cam up. But I would love to have a conversation about the transatlantic slave trade. So one of the things I would do is I would just share some of the scholarly literature that I had to read, of course, during my time as an undergraduate. As I stated before, Black Studies, AAAS, even Pan-African Studies, whatever term you want to use for, of course, Black Studies, is a reading-intensive academic discipline. So one of the books we had to read, of course, was The Diligent, A Voyage Through the World of the Slave Trade by Robert Harms. It's actually a brilliantly written book, and it talks about, of course, a European captain, right, of a slave ship and his experience, right, traveling to Africa, of course, and his how he engaged, of course, the triangular trade. Have another book here. This is on, of course, Islam's Black slaves. We do know that, of course, there was a internal African slave trade as well as a trans-Sahara Arab slave trade. Couldn't it be said that Arabs started it before Europeans did? So we're going to have that conversation, Brother Bag. Tap back in. So this is another book. Another one was Fighting the Slave Trade, West African Strategies. Was another book that we had to read. We had to read about 6 books from front to back, from cover to cover, in about a 7-week class. Like literally, when I tell you, Black Studies, AAAS, Pan-African Studies is a reading-intensive academic discipline. It is truly reading-intensive. You're not going to be watching documentaries. You're not going to be having conversations about how you feel. You're literally going to be reading scholarly text and literature. And of course, last but not least, The Anthropology of Slavery by the French anthropologist or historian Claude Meillassoux, A Womb of Iron, of course, and Gold. It's an extremely dense text, and it's a bit difficult to read because it was translated from French. But if you have an opportunity or a chance, please, please, please check this out. Then there's one last book that I think I would want you all to review. Oh man, I think I grabbed it. I pick it up and put it down. Yeah. One moment. I can't believe. What did I do with it? Well, I can't find it, but it was on the. Oh yes. So here's another. It's a great book. If We Must Die, talks about shipboard insurrections in the era of the Atlantic slave trade. Definitely. So when many people argue that we never resisted, that we were cowards, we were cowardly, we were yellow, we didn't have a stomach to fight back. That is, of course, ahistorical. I can recall that I was doing a workshop, just really kind of just talking to some young brothers and sisters who were elementary school students in Cincinnati. Shout out to the 513, Hamilton County. And one of the young men just said, so, I have a question. Why didn't we fight back? Right. And of course, that affected his self-esteem, his racial self-esteem, and what he thought of himself as a Black person, a person of African descent. And so, of course, I had a conversation with him that, of course, was not true. And then the question he asked was, why aren't we learning this in school? And I told him, I said, well, if I wanted to oppress you, why would I teach you a history that would give you self-esteem? Why would I teach you a history that would empower you, to make you feel good about yourself? So, of course, we had a great conversation there. And then last but not least, there's one more book that I want to share with you all. So give me 1 second. All right. So this piece of literature here, entitled Ouida, The Social History of West African Slave Import, really highlights the role of the Dahomey, the nation state of Dahomey, and of course the slave trade. So if you ever want to review some scholarly literature on the subject matter, I think I just gave you about maybe 5 or 6 books that you could read, where you could learn a bit about what took place or what transpired. So the brother saying, couldn't it be said that the Arabs started it before the Europeans did? I would say no. I would say yes and no. I would say, and the reason why I would say that, once again, these issues are extremely nuanced. It typically is not just black or white. One, we can argue that they started, yes, in terms of exporting Africans out of Africa, right? However, there was already a very strong internal African slave trade. Now, when we mention that, we oftentimes have to put in a disclaimer that the slave trade that took place internally in Africa was different than chattel enslavement that took place outside of Africa, particularly in the Western world. Individuals were not stripped of their humanity. They were not simply seen as beasts of burden, right? There was not a justification for the racial enslavement of individuals, such as, scientific racism, so on and so forth. What we know is that even though it was unfortunate, right? We know slavery is a very sensitive topic, and unfortunately it took place throughout the world. What we tend to find is, and this is just what the research and scholarship supports, is individuals could marry into the family, and become the head of the family. But of course, it was much different than chattel enslavement. At the same time, it was enslavement, but also the servitude was not a lifetime sentence, right? Oftentimes it was for a period. And then of course the person was able to be free. But we know that in the Western world, based on a racially based enslavement, that was not the case. So definitely, I'm glad we got some more people in here. Please tap in, hit the like button, and tap in, be part of the conversation. Once again, you don't have to cam up, right? If you're unfamiliar with the topic, you could just simply ask questions, right? But please tap in, hit the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. We're seeking to have a robust conversation about the transatlantic slave trade. Once again, as I stated before, there are numerous questions, numerous concerns, numerous perspectives and theories about what took place and why it transpired. So definitely I felt that with the, of course, popularity of the movie The Woman King, I thought that this would be the best time to have that, of course, conversation about the transatlantic slave trade, what took place and what truly transpired. So with that being said, please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and let's have a great conversation. I know one of the perspectives that many people give about the transatlantic slave trade was that, now I can recall this is just a personal anecdote. This was something that took place when I was an undergrad. And so I'm in the Black Cultural Center, as you all know I would be. And young lady, and just full disclosure, I used to spaz out on people. Like, if you said something stupid or something that was ahistorical or nonsensical, I used to be in the Black Culture Center. I was like Martin on the TV show Martin. I was like, man, shut your dumb ass up. What the fuck are you? I mean, literally, I would just go in on people. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. And so there was a sister there, and she had stated that, well, my grandmother told me, and literally she said, my grandmother told me that the good thing that came out of slavery was that it introduced us to God. And I mean, I literally lost it. I said, well, first off, I said, your grandmother is a Negro. She's not an elder, right? I said, the whole concept the whole belief in God originated in Africa, right? The whole concept and idea of religion originated in Africa. I said, so for your grandmother to tell you that slavery was good because it introduced us to God, I mean, she actually doesn't know her Black history, right? And so, of course, the sister, she kind of piped down and was like, well, I'm sorry, And I told her, I said, this is why it's important that we're able to differentiate between, of course, an older person and an elder, right? Because there's a difference, right? And of course, I think it's very important that even now, I'm like this even with my parents. I'm like, where'd you get that from? I mean, I can't just believe you just because you're my mom or dad. You're going to have to put some facts behind this position you're taking. I'm not 8 years old. You can't just tell me to believe you just because I'm your child. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Brother Shabazz, tap in. Let me know what you think. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, man? I just actually say what?
I'm doing just fine.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually just found this channel. I think I was talking with you on Dynasty channel the other day.
Okay, yeah, Brother Dynasty Mir. Shout out to Brother
Dynasty. Yeah. So I just came off your other video and then about spookism, and then I so happened to click on this one.
Okay, well, hey, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. But as far as this topic, I think it's great. I actually saw that movie. Did you get a chance to see the Woman King?
I did see the movie, and I did a review on it. I tell people it was very entertaining.
Okay.
It was very entertaining. I won't lie. I mean, it was very entertaining.
Now, but with regards to this topic, how do you think it represented the slave trade?
It was ahistorical.
The European slave trade.
It was ahistorical. The movie was ahistorical in terms of how it represented the slave trade, particularly in terms of Dahome's role in the transatlantic slave trade.
But if we use Dahomey as a microcosm in like a stand-in for what was happening at that time, which is how most people are going to see it that aren't scholarly, like the kids and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the message as a piece of propaganda? How do you feel about what it put out?
So for you asking a great question, shout out to Brother Shabazz. All right, it's all good. Where are you from, by the way?
I'm from San Diego.
San Diego, okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm a Pan-Africanist, so I wear that stuff. Both of my parents are African American.
Okay, and hold on, real quick, because I got to get this right, real quick. Shout out to the 619. Shout out to the 619.
Yep, no doubt.
So I remember Reggie Bush was repping that hard when he was at USC.
So Reggie Bush went to Reggie Bush he went to Helix High School. I went to Mount Miguel. That there are rival. So each year when there's a football game, there's a dagger. Whoever wins keeps the dagger at their school. But it was funny when Reggie was there, Helix was blowing us out for those 4 years. Right. And I didn't get to play him. I was a little bit younger. But it was funny, but we hated him. And then as soon as he went to SC and he graduated, we had to play him no more. The whole San Diego loved him. It was crazy. Yeah,
I bet. And I know he's one of the best to come out of San Diego, along with Alex Smith and Kellen Winslow, even though he's in prison now. But
yeah, we have Kellen Winslow's from like the north, north of the 805. You know what I'm saying? But Reggie Bush is from the same area as me. Okay. And we have the most running backs came out of San Diego. There's no city that produces more running backs than San Diego. We got like 3 or 4 Heismans. Marcus Allen, Ricky Williams, Reggie Bush.
Yeah, Ricky Williams is from San Diego. Sure is.
Yep. Terrell Davis.
Damn.
We got so many. I could keep going.
Okay.
Like big
very
names.
Good. Very good. So I'm gonna ask you a question. So you mentioned the propaganda. So here's the issue. One of the issues I had with the movie. And part of it was in the movie, they have Viola Davis' character, which of course was not based on a real person. That was a fictional person that she was playing.
Well, she was based on a real person. She was inspired. Her character was inspired by a real person. But but that wasn't the life of the actual person. They weren't a general.
So 2 things. One, the person they had her playing didn't exist. But many people are making the argument that she was inspired by another general of the Amazons of Dahomey. So I know what you're talking about there. But so the issue I took umbrage with was this idea and concept of where she said, well, any African person she said something about, it isn't just we won't enslave the Homians, we won't enslave any African person. And so this whole Pan-African idea and concept to me was, I mean, it would have been great if that was the actual history, but it wasn't. And we know this, the scholarly literature shows that in Dahomey, the only issue they took with the slave trade was the selling of Dahomean people into slavery. If you wasn't a Dahomean, they were like, we could give a damn what happens to you, right? So that was an issue that was a completely ahistorical. Another aspect of the movie that was ahistorical was the idea and concept of when she was proposing that they should sell palm oil. In the actual history, it was the King Gazo was the one that proposed selling palm oil after, of course, the British treaty he signed outlawed the slave trade. And unfortunately, the conservative faction in Dahomey, which of course consisted of the female soldiers, pushed him to re-engage in the slave trade because they weren't making as much money as they were before. So those are some of the historical facts. And
yeah, I mean, go ahead and finish.
Book right here, and it talks about this. Talks about that. So
no, I agree with that.
And so one of the issues, and if you haven't checked out Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's channel, please do. He gives a Black masculinist critique of the movie. And one of the issues that he took umbrage with in the movie was the fact that the women in the movie were represented as the moral conscience of the Dahomean people, which he found to be extremely problematic, as we know, also ahistorical, and the fact that when the movie started, they freed, of course, women and children from the Oyo people, right? And the reality of the situation is that in the transatlantic slave trade, the individuals, the gender that the Europeans wanted the most were Black men, not Black women. Because they would take the Black man, send them over to the Caribbean, have them work on the sugar islands. The average life of an African slave, unfortunately, in the sugar islands, sugar plantations of the West Indies and Brazil were 7 years. And they would just work us to death and replace us, work us to death and replace us. On the internal African slave trade, there was a desire, of course, for women. And of course, I know this from the book, Anthropology of Slavery and Gold, Anthropology of Slavery, A Womb of Iron and Gold by Dr. Claude Melesu, where he details this. So there were some things that were ahistorical. The other issue, of course, was Dahomey was the preeminent, I'm gonna say this one more time, the preeminent slave trading nation in the 18th century, right? The preeminent. So they were the ones going around, starting wars, enslaving people, capturing them, and selling them to Europeans, not the other way around as it was depicted in the movie. So that was one thing that was, of course, completely 1000% unequivocally ahistorical.
I think it was ahistorical, but again, I think I kind of threw that out, right? And I looked at them because I'm looking at this through the lens of the non-scholarly people, which is the majority of our people, and I can use the things they put in here. I think were done for the purposes strictly of propaganda. Like even for them to say, when like the moment I seen King Gezo mention selling Africans, I already knew it was BS. But when I watched,
right, that term didn't even exist at the time.
No,
like,
they didn't even think like
to each
that.
other, the African people, yeah,
they didn't think like that.
Oyo, but when Dahomey, this person's from Ashanti, so on and so forth. So yes,
right. They didn't think that way. Right. They didn't think that way, and I think it's really important that we push that thing home. But when I seen what they were trying to do was tell us that we need to unify with each other. So as a piece of propaganda, I understand why they took that ahistorical position. And I think it was better for them to do it that way than to do it my way, if that makes sense.
So
because
when you say my way, what do you mean?
I would have, okay, see, the thing I want people to understand about the slave trade was our faults in it, the things that we did wrong, even though we were outgunned. But we did like with the.
Let me real quick. I'm gonna interject. We didn't become outgunned until the mid 1800s, and so I think it's very important to understand that up until the mid 1800s, Europeans were extremely afraid to go into the interior, right? And in fact, the only way they were able to even get access to to African slaves, is they had to basically kiss the king's ass. They had to court him, give him gifts, and befriend him and get on his good side in order to even be able to trade with him, right? There were even times in the 15th century, 16th century, where Europeans would show up at a port, start trying to trade with people on the coast, and the kings had enough power to seize the entire ship, right? So what ended up happening, as we know, the transatlantic slave trade funded the Industrial Revolution, and the selling of African slaves into the Western world funded the Industrial Revolution, which allowed Europeans to develop better weapons that then subsequently allowed them to come to Africa and say, get down or lay down. And that's what led to, of course, the colonization of the African continent, also known as the scramble for Africa.
I do think they had a benefit with the cannon, and they had a benefit with the muskets that they had before they got to the point where, I mean, they were absolutely dominant when they got the Maxim machine gun, the late 1800s.
You talking about a game changer? It was game over. I mean, where's this little flip when you need them, right? I mean,
right.
When they got the Maxim gun, it was game over. It didn't matter how ferociously we fought. Listen, when you could, I was in the military. I know, like when you could just mow somebody down from 100 feet away, you ain't got nothing to worry about. Go ahead, brother.
Right, but you don't think the in the 1500s? Hopefully, you still hear me.
No, I can hear you. Yeah, I mean, the literature, the scholarly literature, the historical literature doesn't support that. What we do know is that in the 1500s, the Europeans had to court the African kings in order to even be able to trade at their ports. So in the 1500s, no. In the 1600s, no. In the 1700s, no. In the 1800s, yes.
No, because okay, but here's the thing. But let's say that I concede that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the amount of wealth they were able to bring, right? And then the fact that they could play these different groups of people against each other,
mm-hmm.
right? If I come to your city right now and say I'll give you $10,000 for a 5-pound bag of sand, people are gonna dig up so much of it. It'll ruin your land, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's a great point, because what happened was many, particularly Dahomey, they were gaining so much wealth from exporting slaves that they even started making laws to make it easy for people to become criminals so they could be enslaved. So it's a great point that you made.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think that was a big part of it too. Mm-hmm. I think it was a big part of it was they came. And once they were able to put so much wealth into it, and they were also able to, like for instance, if I can plug your neighbor into this wealthy system, that puts you at risk. So even if they didn't have this military dominance, right,
mm-hmm.
they still were the ones who were the main reason for that trade.
Well, yes, yes.
Even without military dominance, they were the main reason.
I wouldn't say they were the main reasons. I would argue that unfortunately our ancestors were equal partners. Because like I said, Europeans at the time, they didn't have the ability to cajole us into doing so. And as we know, there was already an internal African slave trade, and then of course a trans-Saharan slave trade. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean they had a slave trade. I don't know. So you seen them as on equal footing with? Let's look at this, right? So just because they couldn't, because number one, understand that white people couldn't survive in West Africa. It wasn't just military. They could not stay alive. So explorers were going in there and they weren't coming back alive.
Right.
So it wasn't really, even if they could get a military in there, which we could debate whether or not they could, if it wasn't worth it to mobilize if your people were going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that would be a part of it. Dang, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say that people, they couldn't send them in there. They couldn't survive. Okay. Right. So I say that to say that they are not on equal footing with you. So you think the Dahomey were on equal footing with any European power in the 1700s?
They were more powerful than the European powers at that time. And actually, like I said, Europeans didn't gain the military ability to conquer us until the 1800s. When they first came to the African continent, And like I said, there's scholarly historical texts to substantiate what I'm saying. They literally were dependent on on African kings in order to even trade in any way, shape, or form on the coast. Not just in slaves, but to trade anything. And there were several circumstances where they tried to say, we could bypass the king, and the king had the actual power to do what? Seize their ship and all of their goods and throw them in prison, right? We also know that African kings they weren't in cahoots with many European powers, that they would even send their children to Europe to be educated in the business of the slave trade. They would even allow their children to live in the European forts on the coast because they were what? Militarily superior, and the Europeans were dependent on them so much.
Right. Well, see, I got to go get my references in order, because I know that they weren't always repelling all the attacks, because I remember in Destruction of Black Civilization, he talked about how there was I don't remember the battles, so long ago already.
Shout out to Chancellor Williams. Shout out to Chancellor Williams. They're gonna put his name in the air. Dahomey was vassals of the Oyo. The Dahomey had to pay the people. Yes, in the 17th century, in the 1700s, the Dahomey was a tributary state of the Oyo people. However, one of the things that was factual in the movie, the Woman King, was that they actually had a war with the Oyo people, fought them, and then they were able to become a sovereign nation once again. And so they were a sovereign nation from about the mid 1700s all the way up until, of course, the end of the 1800s, around the 1890s, where they actually were defeated by the French. And of course, then Dahomey was colonized and then became Benin. So yes, they were at one point, of course, a tributary state of the Oyo people, but in the 1700s, I believe, if I remember correctly, mid 1700s, they fought the Oyo people in the movie. They defeated them when they were a sovereign nation state until, of course, they were defeated and conquered by the French at the end of the 19th century in the 1890s. And of course, the king at the time, and I'm gonna get to your question, Sister Jones, but tap in, be part of the conversation, please. But the king at the time was King Gezo's grandson. And of course, he ended up being captured. And then, of course, he was sent to Martinique to live in exile. And then, of course, to Algeria to live in exile until he, of course, passed. So that's just a little bit of history there. Sister Jones is saying, when did Europeans introduce their religion? Well, right away, actually. We do know that King Alfonso of the Congo, King Alfonso I of the Congo, I believe this was even in the 1400s, he actually converted to Christianity. Yes, King Alfonso of the Congo.
Yeah, Mbemba Nzinga. Nzinga.
And I'm sorry?
No, I said his name was Mbemba Nzinga was his native name.
Yes. And of course, he changed his name. Yes, thank you, brother. And he was representative of a term that was known as Afro-Europeans, right? So this wasn't somebody who was mixed race. This was an African person who had they were living in both worlds and practicing both cultures, African culture and, of course, European culture. Yes, the Portuguese slave trader linked with the eventual king of Dahomey. I forget his name. I could probably look that up real quick and get his name. But yes, I learned about that in class as well. Because actually what happened was King Gezo came to power due to a coup in which he had his brother, of course, killed and deposed, and he became king because his brother actually had enslaved the Brazilian Portuguese slave trader by the name of Francisco Felix de Souza. He actually had not enslaved, but threw him in jail. Yes, de Souza. Shout out to Caragana. Hey, tap in, be part of the conversation. And what ended up happening was he assisted King Gezo, and of course, funding that coup and having his brother dethroned, and King Gezo became the actual king. And as we know, that the Portuguese slave trader actually had a compound adjacent to the king's palace. So that's how tightly linked the kingdom of Dahomey was with, of course, the European enslavers. So definitely make sure you hit the thumbs up button. We're having a robust conversation about the transatlantic slave trade. We know there are several theories and ideas and concepts about what took place and what transpired. So we want to have a conversation here that's rooted, of course, in facts, that is not ahistorical and rooted in, of course, scholarly literature, where we can have this conversation and finally, hopefully, answer some of the questions that unfortunately have not been answered. Brother Shabazz.
Well, let me go back to, I wanted to ask you on Mbembe Nzinga, right? It was my understanding he did not want the slave trade at first, but he was forced to accept it because the same scenario that I had brought up before. They were on the outside because he was deep inside, right? The continent, and they were on the coastline.
Yeah, but they were in the interior. Yeah.
Yeah, they had made it to him. Like they made it in small numbers, but they didn't. They didn't march to him. They were definitely doing business with him. They needed him. But I just don't see how. Like it's the equivalence. Like if you're a sheriff in the town or a mayor in the town, and then I come in from some rich out of town mafia or whatever the case and start selling drugs and doing crime amongst you, and then you're forced to placate because of the strength of me and the mafia behind me. That doesn't really necessarily mean you wanted to do that. I don't know.
Well, I think it's very important that we also mention that what took place in the Congo is different from what took place in Ouida, Dahomey, or of course on the Gold Coast, right? So once again, there are several variables. There were some places where there was a willingness. There could be other places where there was not a willingness to do so.
I mean, but he was allowing it. He had the same position as the Dahomey. So when he wrote the letter to the king, and he said his only issue was, you're not supposed to be taking my people. That was what he wrote in his letter. So he was accepting of the slave trade. He was just saying, don't take my people. Right. Same thing the Dahomey was saying.
Right.
They didn't have the,
It's because that was already the norm. Hey, we don't have a problem with slavery as long as our people aren't being enslaved.
Yeah.
Well. And like I tell people all the time, it's just like two European nations fighting, right? We know Russia and Ukraine are battling right now. They're both white, but hey, you're Russian, I'm Ukrainian. We're two, and so they see themselves as two different groups of people. And at the time, that's what was taking place on the continent of Africa as well. So, and I say that to push back against that misnomer that when we were selling each other into slavery, that's just ahistorical, right? When you look at the actual history, these were individuals from different nation states who were warring, capturing individuals, and selling them, of course, into chattel enslavement. But brother, go right ahead.
Oh yeah, just gonna step in. Thank you for having me on.
No problem.
I just wanted to just jump or piggyback on to what you were saying. But let me fall back and let you finish because I'm losing my thought right now.
It's okay. You can go right ahead. I have finished what I was going to say.
Well, I know we were looking at King Jao, King Alfonso. I know that we were talking about King Alfonso. We didn't speak on first with King Jao. When they first were making, as far as I guess you want to say trading slaves, it wasn't really trading slaves. They were actually trading, certain individuals, skilled individuals that would allow each kingdom to build up. From that trade, what do you need? Doctors, you need architects, whatever you need. You know what I mean? We traded back and forth. Also, obviously, they were doing it religiously, and from there, it got out of hand. That's when you see those letters from the son of King Jao, which is Alfonso. I know the brother Shabazz. I guess he seems that it seemed like real negative that King Alfonso was right along with it, but it doesn't seem like that. Looking at some of the letters, you can see that they even started to defend themselves versus that. You know what I mean? Versus.
However, what we do know is that, and like I said, that's why I have the book here, West African Strategies Fighting the Slave Trade. Unfortunately, our ancestors, when they tried to fight against the slave trade, it was after the Europeans began to not only encroach on their lands, but also just start taking their own people.
Right.
That's when they hold up, stop, wait a minute, this has gone too far. Because at one point, Europeans just said, we don't give a damn, we just gonna grab anybody. You had individuals, as we saw in the movie, taking different Africans from different nation states, having them march to the coast, and then the Europeans would just grab them too and throw them in the jails. And then right. So that's when, once again, African nation states, even with Queen Nzinga, started to fight back, was after their own people and their land started to be encroached upon.
But with the Congo, it's the first, because it's the early 1400s. That trade begins about 1444 between Portugal.
1450s. I think in the 1450s.
All right, between Portugal and the Congo. It doesn't get until probably, I believe, the 1480s when the letters come out, when it really builds up. But from my understanding, the Portuguese aren't coming in and taking, they're not bringing out people from other parts of Africa. They're just making swaps with the Congo, those that are in the Congo. So
I'm
Portuguese.
going to have to ask you, where you're getting that information?
Just from studying the basic history of the Congo, Angola, and Portugal.
Can you cite a book or an author?
I've read just about. I mean, Chancellor Williams. I've read the books on. Like I can't name anyone particularly off the top. You know what I'm saying? Just reading about King Henry the Navigator. Just the whole.
But the reason I'm pushing back is because there wasn't no one was trading their own people.
Yeah, definitely.
Place. There was never a time where African nations would say, "Hey, we would give you our own folks." Now there came a time later. King Gazo of Dahomey was a good example, where when they didn't have enough people to sell to Europeans, he sold off some of his own people in his own country. Yes, but this idea of they were just trading their own people. We'd
have to go back. I would say, brother, if we could, I'd like to go back, pull up one of the letters from King Alfonso and read it out. Because when you read it out, I'm sure that's what it's going to express.
Yeah, because when he was complaining about his own people being taken.
Right, because in the beginning, it's good. I believe in the letter he expresses that we had an agreement, but it went from that agreement to encroachments where they're raiding. Now they're raiding our villages.
And and that's when they started trying to stop it. It was when they started encroaching and grabbing their own people.
But I believe in the beginning, it's the agreement. The agreement is within those letters. But the
agreement was for the Europeans to take their own people. The agreement was that they would sell them people from other nations.
People from Portuguese were being traded from Portugal were being traded into the Congo. This is how they're introducing the religion. This is how they're introducing some of their architecture and different things. There
was a cultural exchange.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yep.
Yes, there was a cultural exchange. Absolutely.
So from that's where it gets out of hand. But from looking at that, I can't see where people of the Congo are raiding other villages, bringing people. It appears to me, but I'll go back and look at it. But It appears as if it starts like that, as a mutual trade. Okay, I'll give you what you need, what you're lacking. You'll give me what I'm lacking. Yeah. And then it goes from that. Once you're able to set your forts up on our land, now you're kind of.
Yeah, they even had to pay a tax. When they set up the forts, they had to pay a tax to the king every year.
Right.
And like I said, but all of a sudden they got a little too powerful and said, "Hey, you coming too?"
Right.
Yeah. Right. I don't know if you all I saw that there's a group of black brothers and sisters out of LA. They do these skits on YouTube, and one of the sisters, she has a skit. She got like 10 episodes of "I'm coming too," right? So she got a boyfriend. The dude say, "I'm going to my friend's house to play cards." She like, "I'm coming too," and that's what Europeans did. They was like, "You know what? You coming too?"
Right.
Yeah.
But now, Lumumba, when you're saying that they were militarily able to defend themselves, are you including the coastline and the ports? Because it was my understanding, and I just don't have the references right, and I'll have to look into that in a second. But it was my understanding that they were able to dominate on these coastline and these ports because their ships were able to get close and their cannons gave them that superiority.
Well, once again, we know Africa is a very large continent, the second largest continent.
We're just talking about the West, like the main ports that we know, Elmina, things like that.
The western coastline is probably the.
But there's not that many ports, though. Africa does not have that many ports.
But what I can say, there were several ports where they showed up and tried to just take over. Tried to just trade without going through the king, and the king was able to had the military power to seize the ship, the individuals on the ship, and their content. So these things did happen. So I can't say I couldn't say that 100% of the time Europeans were able to show up and just seize the coastline. No.
Once they got the
scholarly literature that stated that no, there were times where they showed up and tried to say, "Hey, we're gonna do whatever we want," and it went extremely poorly for the Europeans.
once Elmina and the other, once not Elmina didn't act in Angola, but once those forts are set up, it became a little bit different.
Yes,
Once
it did.
those,
That's right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I want to say also he was saying about the capturing of other Africans. I mean, people make that scene. They using the word slavery, but I think that's a unfair word. You know what I mean? Because when you go to war with someone, you have a couple of options. One of the options is to commit genocide, and if you don't take people captive, you commit genocide. So you know what I mean? To call them, oh, they just taking slaves. It's no, you're capturing your enemy. That's
right. But I mean, and then they would enslave them. I mean, that's just what happened. I mean, we don't have to sanitize the history. We could call it what it was.
Right, but and also when you're saying enslaved, that's a little bit different. It's not chattel slavery. It's capture of enemy. I mean, when we capture enemies today, is it enslavement? I guess in a way, because
if I could, I mentioned that at the top of the broadcast. This may have been before you tapped in. I think it was because it was on like 3 people on at the time. But I stated that there was the slavery that took place on the African continent was not chattel enslavement. There was not a strip. There was never a stripping of a person's humanity. Individuals were able to become part of family. Oftentimes they married into the family and became the head of the family. The enslavement was not for a lifetime. There was manumission. Of course, we even know that even in Islamic slavery, which many scholars argue was even more brutal than European slavery, if you could believe that, there was, of course, the ability to be manumitted, right? Free, even though in order to be manumitted, you had to adopt the religion of the enslavers, which was become Muslim, right? But with that being said, there was the process, of course, of manumission. So great thing. I'm glad you pointed that out, but I do want to say I didn't mention at the top of the broadcast, but I have no problem with you reiterating, of course, that very important fact.
I thought it was important. I'm glad you did mention that.
Yes, sir.
So this was a mutual thing then, basically.
Go real quick, commercial. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. We're having a conversation here at themovamentspeaks.com, Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. We're having a pivotal conversation about an extremely sensitive topic in African history. That is, of course, the transatlantic slave trade. As many of you know, there are several questions, several theories, but oftentimes people don't have the answers. And so we're having a conversation, a robust conversation about this issue, but it's rooted, of course, in scholarly and historical literature. So with that being said, brother, we're going to turn it back over to you, to Brother Shabazz.
No, I was just going to say, most people would say that this was, I forget which author, he called it the European slave trade, which is what I've called it since I've read it. But the way you're phrasing it is basically like it was just a mutual thing. Like the Europeans didn't necessarily force their hand and cause this slave trade.
Yes. So, like I said, this is an unpopular position for someone to take. As I said, I am a Pan-Africanist, right? I've been a Pan-Africanist, I dare say, since I was 5 years old. But the scholarly literature doesn't support this. And I'm not talking about scholarly literature written by white folks, right? We're talking about people being objective. Is that what we do know is that for the first several hundred years, I dare say from maybe the 1400s up until maybe the 1700s, Europeans were dependent on European kings, not only providing them slaves, but also providing them protection while they were in Africa, on the African coast. This is a reality. And this is something
but see, you're just looking at, you can't, go ahead.
This is something that was even touched on a little bit in the movie, where the white guy was like, well, if you ain't gonna do X, Y, Z, then I ain't gonna protect you, I ain't gonna help you out. And he said, well, if you don't help me out, then I won't protect you.
But look at the trick in that. There's a trick in that. And that is, when you're dealing with these kings, when they're saying they're coming and doing business with kings, they're doing business with kings that they're putting in power, which means it's not really an African king. It's like a puppet king.
Well, so once again, this is an extremely nuanced situation. There were some kings who rose to power due to the help of Europeans. There were other kings that were already in power and decided to work with the European enslavers. Once again, this is not a monolithic situation, right? Where one size fits all. In some situations, there were individuals put in power, like we said, King Gezo, with the help of the Portuguese enslaver. And there were other situations where kings were already in power, had already ascended to the throne. right?
Right.
They was willing to work with Europeans because they saw it as what in their best interest. This is just the reality. For example, in Ghana, we know what the Ashanti people were preeminent, and of course the slave trade. In Ghana, every 2 years they have a Panafest. This is a Pan-African festival where they call on African people from the diaspora to what? Return home, and the Ghanaian government officially renders an edict where they apologize for their role, where they're acknowledging, hey.
Yeah, but that's wrong too. I think that's wrong as well. I don't even Ghana as a country didn't exist. That's not even the same people. For them to offer apology. But I wanted to go back, if you don't mind. I know I'm interrupting, man, but I just got to say, because we're looking at it and I see the way you're explaining it. But when you look at history from the other way and look at Europeans coming into Africa, it doesn't come off like that. It doesn't come off as they're coming in with allies. When Spain,
I'm not saying that they came in as allies, but what I'm saying is they wouldn't have been able to do what they did without the protection and blessing of African kings. This is just a reality. I know that it's not something we want to hear, but it's the historical facts.
Well, let me challenge it. When we start off with Portugal. When they come in, we do, as we just explained, the beginning with Angola, but right from there, the Congo, right from the second generation, it's already fighting back. So it's not just they're coming in and they got allies on the coast. The second country to come in will be Spain. When Spain comes in, they don't come in and just meet up with kings. They come in through, violent means. You know what I mean? They're coming in, and you have them coming in through Morocco. You know what I mean? And it's not as.
But we're not talking about Morocco. We're talking about West and Central Africa.
Right. Even as they come in through they're not coming in. Look at the stories. When under what king do they come in and just become allies and start working?
I never said they were allies.
Well, even business partners. At what point when they at the very beginning, they're at war. The Battle of Soweto, the first conquering of a city in Africa coming out of Europe, that's not allies. That's a war. 1415, that's the Battle of Soweto. That's not coming in and having a mutual, let me just buy slaves. That is a war.
Again, but you are taking one particular situation and pushing that on all of West Central Africa. You can't do that. That's not how history works. There are numerous variables in play. For example, I will use an example here in America. What took place in New York City is you can't take that and juxtapose that to that's what took place in Kansas City, Missouri. What took place in Kansas City is independent of what took place in New York City.
True indeed. I'm just starting there because it's the beginning.
This is the same thing that happened, of course, on the African continent. We don't want to admit this, but the reality is, on a macro, overarching level, Europeans would not have been able to export 10 to 15 million African people from Africa without our ancestors.
All right, I'm going down the line though. So we just looked at two of the European countries and I didn't see it. So when I looked at Portugal, I saw them come in and it's not the way they're saying, or the way it's not them coming in and just.
What happened there wasn't.
Look at Spain.
Hold on. What happened there is a representative of what happened with the Portuguese people when they went in other places in Africa, particularly Dahomey. When they went to Dahomey, they didn't have to fight and start a war to start.
When you get to Dahomey, you're so far in history, it's too late. The slave trade been going on for centuries by then, and puppets have been put in place by then. So of course,
even before the puppet was put in place, they were already trading slaves with the Portuguese, even before King Gazo.
Okay, but Mumu, let me ask you this:
of the Portuguese enslavement.
Who built Elmina, the port? Did the Portuguese not build that?
Yes, they did.
The Portuguese showed force, came with multiple ships, and I guess we could say that they agreed and they made an agreement with the Portuguese to allow them to make that. But it's like, how much of a choice did you really have?
Right. What's the fortress set?
Now we're speculating. Right. That's the issue.
Oh, well, I mean, we know they brought a large fleet with them. We know that
here's the thing. As I stated,
right.
We want to have this conversation rooted in scholarship, right? So one of the things I stated, oftentimes when people have conversations about this very sensitive issue, is people begin to speculate. right? Rather than dealing with what? The historical facts that we know.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to stick to the facts that we know that we could support with
But
scholarship.
when you're saying that it was mutual, that's speculation because
No,
you don't
no.
have a king. You're not giving us a king who was the king that first started dealing with Spain that just started trading with them without any scuffles or anything.
Once
If
again,
we don't know, we have to speculate.
well, I'm not speculating because I have the literature right in front of me.
Please share it.
Right, I will. First and foremost, The Anthropology of Slavery by Claude Melesu, A Womb of Iron and Gold. This book actually won an award for best book in African history the year it was published. The other, once again, we can move to, this is the title, I don't know if you can see it, Ouida, the Social History of a West African Slave Import, 1727 to 1892. We also have, and this is a bit of a little further in the history, but If We Must Die, Shipboard Erections, so insurrections in the era of the Atlantic slave trade, right? We also have, of course, Fighting the Slave Trade, West African Strategies, right? We also have, give me 1 second. This is one of the best books I've read, The Diligent, A Voyage Through the Worlds of the Slave Trade by Robert Harms. This was actually a text that was written by an actual European slave trading captain of a ship, and he details his experiences traveling to West Africa, particularly to Ouida. And of course,
I read that. Yeah.
Yes. So there is a bevy of literature, and of course, we even talked about the Islamic slave trade and his Islam's Black Slave to Other Black Diaspora by Ronald Seagull, author of the Black Diaspora. So there's a litany of scholarly literature on the subject matter. So
Are they identifying though? Are they identifying kings or kingdoms? I mean, jumping in and say someone like Dahomey, it's kind of crazy to me because it's so late in the game already. You know what I mean? It's already a system set up and in place.
Yes, actually, in the literature they do identify. In fact, I even mentioned in the sis just put it in the chat. I'm sorry because I've read this was so long ago. I took this class what it was like summer of 2013. But there were several, and I mentioned the one where Europeans showed up and started trying to trade on the coast without getting the blessing of the king. And the king seized the ship, the contents, and all the individuals that were on the ship, threw the Europeans in jail. And then, of course, they had to get the help of the king from their country to have them released. And they had to, pay the king, so on and so forth. And that's how they set up for having to pay taxes to trade in their port, and even have to pay a tax to even set up a fort on the coast. So these things did happen.
Sounds
and
what
I will say is this: you're not going to be paying somebody money every month to operate a business if they are not the person in power. That doesn't
right. But what they trading?
I mean, that's just the reality.
No,
right?
I mean, but that's like
you know how the mob work. You paying for protection. They got a racket going. You're not paying them because you're the one running things.
Because they were paying, I mean, they could have been paying just on basic trade in general.
No, they had to pay a tax simply to operate. Right. So
right. That's what I mean. Right.
They already paid them for the slaves, but they also had to pay a tax just for being there on the land.
All right. Now we look at those two. That was Spain and Portugal. Now, when you look at who comes in next, it's going to be England. When they come in, why don't
Dutch,
they just?
Right?
No,
Wouldn't it be the Dutch before England?
Well, the Dutch are kind of like a colony of Portugal in them. So it's a colony of Portugal at the time. So I just consider that like Portugal. Country-wise coming in, you look at England, and England doesn't go to the coast of West Africa. Now the slave trade been going on over 100 years. When they get in, almost 150 years. But when they go, why don't they just go to the coast of West Africa and purchase people? They don't. What they do is take the cargo from the Portuguese and the Spanish. That's how they get in the slave trade. If it was an open market like that and they've been running for over 100 years, why couldn't they just go to the coast like everyone else and purchase?
And we would have to review the literature of why the English did that, right? Why? Because one thing we do know, they were always beefing with each other, right? And so their ethnic conflicts, we would have to look at the literature as to why, rather than speculating, looking at why they chose to Because this is what took place even in South Africa. This is, of course, when they were trying to take over. And the Dutch were down there, they found gold, and then the English showed up and said, well, since you found gold, it's our gold, and we're going to take it from you. You took it from the Africans, we're going to take it from you. So maybe, once again, speculation, the English wanted the gangster or the Europeans. We don't know. So we would have to look at the literature as to why the English chose to take from the Portuguese and the Spaniards and so on and so forth, rather than going straight to the African continent and giving itself directly.
And even when you mentioned the Dutch, they don't come in with a mutual slave trade deal either. None of them do. No one that we look at do. I hear it being said, but I can't see it taking place. When they tell their own history, they don't have that story.
And what I'm saying is that the scholarly literature does support that. In some parts of Africa, that did take place.
What does the scholarly literature say about England? Why wouldn't they just go and purchase slaves? If there's a slave market where everyone could come from Europe and just purchase slaves of West Africa because they have an open slave market, then why don't they just go?
I never said everyone.
Well, I mean, it's an open slave market. England wants in, but instead of just going and purchasing them, they have to fight the Spanish and the Portuguese. The only way that John Hawkins gets his cargo is by being a pirate.
Once again, you're kind of moving away. What we also know is that when you have an item that people want, you can sell it to whoever you want. This is a reality.
Why didn't the English just buy from Africans? If that's the story.
You're speculating.
No, I'm not. It's a legitimate question. If the claim is that it was an open market and Africans were just selling, why didn't the Europeans come to the coast?
And what I said was, I can't answer the question because I haven't reviewed the literature on that particular issue. So what we would have to do to answer that question is to review the historical scholarly literature on that particular issue and then come back and have a conversation about it.
All right. I mean, it starts with John Hawkins, so it's not much research we got to do.
But I know we're talking about why they chose to do that.
Why they chose not to purchase slaves from African kings.
That's something you would have to review the literature.
Why? It's an open market. You can just go buy them, but you choose not to. You can't.
But we would have to do the research as to why. Just like we have for example, we can use a contemporary example here in America. There might be a Fortune 500 business down the street. Yet the person decides to go rob a bank. The person did what they did, but we would have to interrogate why you chose to rob the bank rather than go get the job at the Fortune 500 company. We know you did this, but the why is what matters, right? If we don't know the why, people would speculate. Well, he would speculate. People would speculate. He robbed the bank because that's just who he is. He's a criminal. Or he robbed the bank because his parents are miscreants. Or he robbed the bank because his home was a criminal incubator. That's speculation. The why is what matters. In order to know the why, we have to review the scholarly literature.
Well, what about did it happen or not? Is that important? Because it didn't happen.
We've already established.
They didn't just go to Africa and purchase slaves. Why they did or didn't, I don't care. Hey,
this is my channel. You can't overtalk me.
All right.
Once again, we already established that. Yes, we did. We already established that.
That England didn't purchase slaves from West African kings. They didn't just come in. All right.
What I said was the why they didn't do it is what we don't know.
All right. Now, what about the next country? How did they go in?
Which country?
Would that be France, right?
Yes. So the French, they came to Dahomey as well.
But can't come to Dahomey. You have to. They don't exist until the 16th century. So
no. So when they started trading, they started trading with Dahomey, and then as we know,
you said
things went south.
I'm sorry. You said the French started off their first into Africa is dealing with the Dahomey.
That's not what I said.
I'm just asking to clarify. I'm not accusing you of it. No, I'm just asking to clarify.
That's not.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure out how did you say they got into French? Their first. I'm trying to understand how the French got into the slave trade in West Africa. Who they start buying from first? Because that's the claim that Europeans just came down each country and started buying from Africans. You know what I mean? But when I'm looking to the story, I'm like, okay, so which Africans and at what point in history? Because when I look at their story on how they're coming in, it doesn't say that. They don't come in and just buy. They come in and they attack the next group that's in front of them, the next European group, and they take over their forts. And when they take those forts, and then with the power of the forts and that military might with those cannons and all that, they're able to do the business that they have to do with those tribes and negotiate.
They still were paying a tax to the African kings, even with those forts. And what we do know is that even with those forts, many African kings would have their children actually go and live with the Europeans and learn the European culture to become more accustomed and well-versed in, of course, the business of the slave trade. So like I stated before, even when they had those forts on the coast, they still didn't have enough power until the 1800s to actually come in and just take over.
Right.
And what we know is, how we know this is because when they had that power, that's when they colonized. When they had enough power to militarily dominate, they did, because they colonized.
It's when they went around the world with. That's when they came with the Gatling gun.
It's more to it than that too, though, because Africa wasn't really as profitable at that time too, in the 1500s, when they were like going around spending a lot of their money going to the Americas. So then that we can't speculate that they didn't do it. That's speculation. That the reason they didn't do it was simply because they didn't have the military might at the time.
That's speculation. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my thing. So for France, can we? Is there a way for us to look and see real quick how they get involved? Because I can't find I can't find anything that says they just left from France and came down the coast of Dahomey. It's not what it says.
Say that again.
Trying to find out who France first started dealing with when they first get involved with the slave trade. What nation or ethnicity are they dealing with?
Right. I would have to go back and particularly look at that. I would have to look at the index of some of these books and find that. But I would agree with what Shabazz said, that was rather simplistic, right? Because we do know there were, once again, a number of factors and variables at play. And you mentioned that it not being financially lucrative. That's a great point, because I remember when I took the class on the history of the transatlantic slave trade, one of the things that Europeans took umbrage with was the fact that the currency in many West African nation states were cowrie shells. Mm-hmm. And the only place that they were able to acquire cowrie shells was South Asia, right? Mm-hmm. Indonesia, Java, mm-hmm. right? And so they was like, damn, well, we got to go all the way here to get these cowrie shells and they're paying to you. This is costing us a lot of money. So that's great. That's a great point. That was another issue that played a role as well, Brother Shabazz.
I just want to say really quick, man, I'm glad you did this. And I like the format here, because there's so many. I've been getting past with generalities for so long. I can't even remember no specifics. You know what I'm saying?
You name it them. You name it them. So you know some.
But it's like it's spotted. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be on point, and it just reminds me, because right now, and I'm sure you guys are having the same thing with this Woman King movie coming out. A lot of people come to us for information,
right. But, mm-hmm. And if I could, brother, but
go ahead.
To be honest, and brother, Ghana, you can say this as well. We're talking about like a 400, maybe 500 year period. It's hard to know all of it.
Right.
It's difficult.
Right.
Right. It's true though. I'm gonna tell you, bro. The number one thing, when I started to actually travel to Africa a few years ago,
yes, sir,
my understanding of West African history, I gained a whole new perspective, because what we do in this community, for lack of a better term, everything's so general. And when I start looking at people in the face that's are like two tribes that are close to each other and have a different history, and I have to look at them and say, you Africans had this happen. Because I know that's not what happened here. Actually, my grandfather did this. And so being specific is very important. So it's good that you're doing that.
And I appreciate that. And we know oftentimes there are even individuals in our communities that are contrarian and want to deny their African heritage. They were engaged in those type of generalities as well, right? And so, as we know, the devil's in the details. And when you were dealing with brothers who are as intellectually acute as you both are, what we know is that there are a number of variables at play. It isn't easy just to say, you Africans did this to us. And, it's just history is like that. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to, of course, do this show, because we, like you said, people tend to push those generalities, and you're like, well, that really ain't how it went down, brother. You got to really consider all of these different factors, and there were different nation states, and no, there wasn't this whole, because mind you, during the slave trade is where this whole idea and concept of race started to be created. We know Eric Williams, who of course was a professor of history at Howard University and later became the first president, the first prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Right, and shout out to Trinidad and Tobago because we know per capita they've created more globally predominant Pan-Africans than any country in the world, right? With C.R.L. James, we're talking about Stokely Carmichael, we're talking about George Padmore, so on and so forth. But what we know was he argues in his book, Capitalism and Slavery, which I actually have behind me here. That's another great book I should have snatched up. My bad, I could have grabbed it. But he mentions how capitalism initially was the primary goal for Europeans, and then this whole idea of racism was created. This is his thesis, of course, as a way to justify the enslavement of African people. And from that, we had different derivatives of this type of racism, such as scientific racism, or viewing Africa as some place that was barbaric, and so on and so forth as justification. So it's just a lot of history here, a lot of literature you have to view. Like I stated, when I took this class about 9 years ago, it was a summer course. So, summer courses aren't as long as this fall or spring semester courses. So I think the class maybe was 7 or 8 weeks, and we had to read 6 books from cover to cover. And the professor was like, listen, Black Studies is a reading intensive academic discipline. Either you're going to read the books or you aren't. If you're not going to read the books, drop the class. So we started off maybe with 25 people in the class. It would probably be like 7.
Wow.
Yeah, no, we had to read, read.
Yeah, and I just moved, so all my stuff's in storage. But how often do you do this show?
Man, I try to get come on maybe twice a week. As you all know, and I mentioned this a number of times, I'm in the last year of my doctoral program. And so as you can imagine, I'm very busy. I also work full-time as a higher education administrator at Ohio University. So, but I try to do it twice a week.
Okay.
Typically,
right.
like
I think next time I'm gonna have to have my books ready because I don't even have my books right now.
Yes, so I try to do like on a Wednesday and of course a Friday. And those are the evenings that work best for me.
And they all great, every single one of them. Every time you do, and they're all great. Every time you do a show, it's great.
I appreciate it. And I would love for you all to be on my show that's coming up Friday, where I don't know if you all are aware, but there's a song called BDF Baby Daddy Free.
Yeah.
And so I actually reached out to the sister on Instagram and said, listen, sister, we got to have a conversation about the song. She haven't hit me back yet, but I gave her my bio and rundown, everything like that. I don't know if I'll hear from her, but she's actually from Oakland, but she lives in Atlanta right now. So shout out to Cali, the Golden State, West Coast, on making a comeback, right? Maybe not in this way, but in another way.
Right. Baby Daddy Free, what's that about?
Oh man,
in the song she's talking about and we're
having an abortion,
but she talks about I'm baby daddy free. I don't have an N-words baby coming out of me. And she's talking about I got murder on my mind. And she's
murder.
Yeah. She talks about I missed the plan B, so I'm going to the clinic. And she's talking about I got murder on my mind. So the name of the show for Friday will be Are We Celebrating Black Genocide?
And she's twerking in front of a abortion clinic.
Yeah, murder on my mind. Literally, I mean, this is just why. I'm like, man, ain't no way nobody made a song like this. Because I'm really not I listen to hip hop. I don't listen to rap, right? And so, I'm so far removed because I'm in my 30s. So I'm not like, I don't know every song that's coming out. I don't even listen to the radio anymore, right? And so when people told me, I'm like, man, get the, what out of it. That shit ain't nobody made no damn song called that. So somebody sends it to me. I'm like, get the fuck out of Dayton. I'm from Dayton. Shout out to the 937 West Dayton Strong, right? And so I said, man, this is unbelievable. So we got to have a conversation about this. I'm trying to get some sisters to tap in as well.
Interesting.
Sometimes we don't get a lot of sisters, but if the sisters are out there, please tap in, share your perspective. Once again, just facts over feelings. And we just want you to be able to substantiate the claims that you're making. But so that's what we're going to do Friday. But I appreciate it. But I want us to have some adult, respectful conversations, which we always do. Even when we disagree, we're respectful, we're critical, and we act like what I believe African people should act, right? Because we know one of the 3 years of Black Power is what? Respect. We should respect our African people. And we do that. We know on other platforms that doesn't happen, unfortunately. And so, but I just thought this was important because, as Brother Shabazz said, there's so many gaps because of the history, but also there's a lot of the generalities that take place. I remember I got a brother who's actually a mentee of mine, and he told me about how there was a group of Hebrew Israelites going around saying that Africans were selling Hebrew Israelites into slavery. That's what really happened. And of course, the brother who's my mentee took a class on that transatlantic slave trade. He's like, this is not what happened at all. They're just going around making stuff up. right? So that's kind of why I felt it was important to kind of do a show on this. So
no, that's interesting with that song though. But in the end of the day, she could make that song. But
absolutely,
her song could not be worse than the reality that people are actually doing this stuff. This is
and here's the worst part, brother. Like the sister got bars. Like she got so all her music, I checked out her page, all her music is ratchet. You know what I mean? But she has bars. I'm like, damn, like you can really flow. Like you actually are a lyricist, but you're choosing to make this type of music.
That's how you get on though. You got to have something new. Man, that's interesting. I'm gonna definitely check that out.
Just very quickly, and we could table because I don't want to, I want to save a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Lauryn Hill said Lauryn Hill, the beautiful Lauryn Hill, the vivacious Lauryn Hill, the beautifully talented Lauryn Hill, of course, in 1998 set a record for winning 5 Grammys for her album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. That's a record. No woman has ever won 5 Grammys for one album. She also was nominated for 10 Grammys, but won 5, and she even beat Madonna for Album of the Year. So what we know is that you don't have to make that type of music to be a success in the music industry.
Well, that wasn't the trend at the time, though. But we'll save this for later.
Kim, you had Foxy Brown, you had Uncle Luke. So we did see that there were women out here who were doing that, believing that sex sells, but they still weren't as successful as Lauryn Hill, because at the end of the day, what skills pay the bills.
Right, yeah, I give it to you.
But they work overtime to prevent that, try to get the market away from that. We know that sells. We know that sells.
I know you're telling the truth.
Because hip hop,
you're telling the truth.
Yeah, at one point, hip hop, that's all you could do, pretty much. You know what I mean? It speaks unconscious.
And you couldn't prove it on demand in the community. Like my daughter, she's a B girl. She like to break and all that good stuff, right? And she's been into this since she was like 6. So I was like, all right, so we celebrate Kwanzaa on our Christmas. So I got her a book on the origins and history of hip hop. So, every time I'd be like, all right, you got to let me know where the hip hop start. It started in the South Bronx, New York City.
August 11th. Yeah,
1974, right? So then she had to tell me about the Bridge Wars. She got to know the history. So,
wow.
So long story short, but I said, part of hip hop is you have to be able to prove your skills. I said, in order to become an MC, you have to be able to what? Rap on demand in front of a crowd. Right, so because my daughter, I try to rap my daughter like stop it before you hurt yourself, right? Because I can't rap. If I try right now, my channel gets shut down. That's how bad I am, literally, right? So she's like, stop it before you hurt yourself, right? But I let her know that this was the aspect of hip hop. Now, I was like, so as we know, there's a difference between hip hop and rap. And KRS-One said it best: rappers spit rhymes that are mostly illegal. MCs spit rhymes to uplift their people.
Right.
Right, and so now I'm like, damn, like the beat is knocking, this sister could flow, but like you talking about, I got murder on my mind. I'm like, Lord have mercy. So you talking about Nas Black Girl Lost? Woo!
Yeah.
Look, man. At the end of the day, if it's happening, the way things are today, people gonna make a song about it eventually, man.
Right.
And it's happening, I don't think you should be able to make this type of music, but we got this freedom of speech thing in this country, which I disagree with. Right. I wouldn't allow that, but that's the rules. That's the law of this land, and they'll give us enough room to do anything that's destructive for us. So that's unfortunate.
In fact, I'm gonna base you back on what you said. Typically, if you're doing something, because First Amendment, right? But if you're doing something that actually is going to be constructive rather than destructive, they try to shut it down and stop it.
Right, exactly.
I remember when I was in community college, right? So I started off at a community college, then went to a Ford University, got my bachelor's, went to a graduate school, got 2 masters, and now I'm getting my PhD. I was at a community college, and I was part of like this Black National Student Group. And I was like, well, if we do anything that's actually helping the Black students, like make it matriculate through the institution and graduate, they're going to try to stop it. So, but I'm always talking and shit. That's why I got this channel, because I'm talking all the time. So like maybe 6 to 8 months later, I finished. I leave the community college. I'm at a 4-year university. I'm doing a double major. And I came back for like a meeting because they was doing a citywide Kwanzaa celebration. They wanted me to host it. And the sister was like, well, they giving us all these problems. I'm like, damn, that's fucked up. And then she's like, well, you know what you told me? I'm like, well, what I tell you? I say a lot of things. She said, you told me if we're doing something that's actually having a positive, constructive outcome for Black people, they're going to try to stop it. And I said, damn. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I hate
Right.
I hate the fact that I'm right about that.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the way it is, because like we have a thing in my city, the district
San
attorney in
Diego,
my
right?
yeah, San Diego, the district attorney in the city, a few years back, they had a thing, they called it Penal Code 182.5, and what they did, it actually made national news. It was a couple of brothers that I knew.
Okay.
I was living at one of their grandma's house a few years back. What they did is they arrested a brother for a rap. They said that the raps he was doing was promotion for a gang, that he was on the gang injunction list, something that we have here in California. So they have a gang injunction list where they have criteria where they identify you as a gang member. So identifying him as a gang member, they said that his rap song was a promotion for the gang, even though it didn't reveal any crimes or anything. And they locked him up as a part of a RICO case.
I was just about to say that, Rico.
Right. Based on his lyrics alone. And the judge even said that, I'm not saying you did these crimes. The judge admitted that. So they used that against him. Now, the funny thing, right? I actually agree with that perspective. The only problem is the racism, right? Because I grew up here and I know for a fact that these dudes made gang propaganda, and that was the purpose of the music. You see what I'm saying? But the racism is the issue. They only doing it to us. So obviously I was against Penal Code 182.5. But you know, I don't know. This shit gotta go.
Wow, Penal Code. And is this in just San Diego or all of California?
No. It was gonna. It was something that was there, and Bonnie Dumanis, the district attorney, decided to use it. So if she was able to get it through, which she didn't, that would have set the precedent to be used throughout California. If that makes sense. But you won't have any trouble finding it if you just type in Penal Code 182.5. It was actually a national story.
Okay. And brother Ghana, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Georgia. I'm from up north. So I have an accent, but yeah, I'm in Georgia.
Okay. What part of the north are you from?
I'm from Massachusetts, Boston.
Okay, Beantown. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Well, what's the black neighborhood in Boston? I forget the name of it.
Well, mainly three. That would be Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan area.
Roxbury, yeah, that's where Malcolm's big sister stayed.
Yes, sir. Ella, right on Dale Street. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Roseland. Yeah. All right, look at Beantown in the house, no doubt. All
yes,
right,
sir.
Very good. So, I appreciate you all coming out, being part of the conversation. You all are always welcome, right, to come in and be part of the conversation. I definitely appreciate your respect, how you all carried yourself, and more importantly, the fact that you all were providing perspectives that were undergirded and what factual information. I definitely support that. I'll also always state that, the Movement Speaks, we are a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, right? And to do so, I argue that we have to do two things, right? It's twofold. One, that we need to build institutions to serve the needs of our people. Then two, to create initiatives to help give our people, particularly with the younger generation, a competitive advantage in a global economy. What do you all say to that?
I unite with that.
Yes, sir. Me too. 100%.
Very good. So once again, I appreciate you all tapping in. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. We got to get 100 thumbs up. Okay. I made a deal with my daughter. If I don't get 100 thumbs up, I got to do 100 push-ups. So help your brother out. Help the brother out, right? Because I'm in the gym all the time working out. So I need to, get a little rest when I'm not in the gym. But definitely appreciate you all. And I'm going to try to start doing, if I can, more frequent shows. I'm actually, one of my brothers who's from New York City, shout out to the East Coast, 212. He lived up in Harlem when I stayed with him. I stayed at 146 in St. Nick. Fastest way to Harlem is the A train, right? He told me, he said, man, you need to actually go out and about in town and start having some shows on some pertinent issues in the community. And one of the things I think we're going to touch on is this upcoming midterm election.
Right.
Right. Particularly, you said you're in Georgia. I've been hearing some things about Stacey Abrams. I've been hearing some things about the brother who's trying to retain his Senate seat going up.
One off.
So I definitely want to get you all's perspective on that, because, of course, I don't even like the South. I hate the South. When I was in the military, I was stationed down south, and I was running to get my ass back north, okay? I felt like it was the 1800s, okay? this is some bullshit. It's like a whole other country down here. Right? I mean, literally. I tell people all the time, the only part of the South I ever live in is South Florida. I don't give a damn anywhere. If I'm not in South Florida, I'm talking about what? Dade County or Broward County or West Palm Beach. I'm not living in the South. You can kiss that shit goodbye. I'm like Jadakiss, kiss the game goodbye. I'm serious. Ain't gonna happen. No. I've been to Atlanta several times. Atlanta is extremely cosmopolitan. We know Georgia is one of the nicknames for Georgia. Not only is the Peach State, but the Empire State of the South. After, of course, New York City, which is considered the Empire State. But I don't fucks with the South. It just don't work for me.
I like the South there. I went to college in the South just for a year. University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa, Roll Tide.
Hey, hold up, God, go to Ghana. Hey, this is old state all day, so you can't come on Roll Tide.
I know. Listen. I graduated. I mean, I'm technically alumni, but I graduated from UTEP actually.
Okay.
I just went there for a year, so okay. I'm still a minor. You know what I mean?
Sister Jones saying, Rose, let me tell you something. That's cool because when we beat their ass in the playoff, it's all good. We're gonna take that shit this year. We're gonna take that shit this year.
Right.
This year. Literally. We're gonna take it this year.
Man, listen, I thought Texas, I don't know if you've seen that first game. I thought Texas was better than Alabama in that game.
Well, they were, but their quarterback got hurt. Like I said, yeah, she said unlikely. Trust me, we could put some money on. I'm a betting man. We could put some real quick. And I know y'all not gonna like this because I believe in always betting on black. And people got on me about this at the gym. So I'm a huge boxing fan. I used to box myself. I had a modest career. And I remember the last time I had a fight. This is when I was older. I shouldn't have been fighting no more. And I remember dude had me leaking and shit, right? If my kids came into the ring afterward and gave me a hug, like I was like 35 or something like that. They hugged me like, it's okay, Dad, right? But long story short, and people really got on me about you a Pan-Africanist, you believe in always betting on black, you talking about black this, black that, Africa this, Africa that. But in the second and third Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder fights, I put my money on Tyson Fury. And people was like, how?
Oh, man.
And I said, well, I believe in betting on black, not betting on Negro. And I said, number two, I said, I know boxing, I'm not boxing aficionado. I said, Deontay Wilder can't fight.
Oh, man.
He can't fight.
He can't box.
Man.
At all.
Man.
So I knew. I mean, I made like $700 off that second fight.
That was a cheating fight, man. That was a cheating fight. Both them fights was dirty, man.
But I knew it. I said, I know boxing. Skills pay the bills. I've been in the ring before. Like the dude's footwork is horrible. He don't know how to move his head off the line. He never throws a punch with the proper position or anything. But he was winning. Why? Because he has a right hand made of vibranium. But I said but Tyson Fury, I have to say this, even though he's a white guy, right? You got to be honest, call a spade a spade. He's not only is he very skilled, not only does he have great stamina, he also was tough as nails.
Man, I couldn't disagree more.
All right, you just gotta be honest.
I gotta disagree. As far as boxing skills, man. I mean, the dude is against Wilder. He did look pretty nice, but I'm looking at his other fights. Like, what other fights do you see that he looks good in? Like, he's not really a good.
I would tell you.
I'm a big time boxing fan.
You asked the question, I'm gonna tell you. When he fought Dylan White, he boxed circles around that guy and then knocked him out.
But it's Dylan White.
Hold on. I'm just telling you. When I first learned about Tyson Fury, I thought this was just a big white dude that talked a lot in order to get these big fights. Then I went back, and that's what I believe. Like, man, this dude can't fight. He just talk a lot.
You were right.
Hold on. Then I watched the first fight he had with Wilder, where he was outboxing him the entire fight, except for those 2 rounds where he got dropped. Then I went back and watched the fight he had against Klitschko, where he outboxed him. Then I went back and started watching his maturation from when he had his heavyweight debut all the way up. And I said, dude, this dude actually has skill. He actually has footwork. He actually knows how to counter. He could counter punch, right? I mean, he has a great boxing IQ. I just have to admit it.
All right. Now, you said, I'm going to go back to the first one. The fight with Klitschko was one of the most boring heavyweight title fights in the history of boxing. I think between the both of them, they might have landed 80-something punches. looked horrible in that fight. There's no question about that. I mean, that was
but his
absolutely
goal
horrible.
in that fight was to be defensive and frustrate him, and he was successful.
And he was on steroids that fight. And after that fight, when he went and fought Hammer, he was busted with the steroids and with the ripped glove. He maybe had the thumb ripped off. That was the next fight right after he won the title. But forget his cheating part. I mean, I don't see skill.
He didn't cheat against Wilder. He just whooped his ass.
Well, I don't know. The third fight, they wanted to let him get in the ring with wrinkled gloves, which I've never seen in boxing. You don't usually let you do that with worn out gloves. It's not cool. They let him do it. The WBC.
You will have to provide some evidence to substantiate that, because
I can't.
He whooped his ass. He just beat him up. That's just the reality. He beat him up.
Before the fight, when they went over the gloves, his coach, his trainer, even tried to object to the gloves, but he gave up too quick. He's like, "Look at the gloves. They're wrinkled. They're wrinkled and broken in." You know what I mean? And they
Mike
said
Tyson used to do the same thing. Mike Tyson would break his gloves in the night of the fight.
You can't break them in. That's why they have them sign and put in that plastic
I know,
bag.
but Mike Tyson would do that. As soon as he would put them on, he would punch up against the walls to break them in so that you could feel his knuckles. He even admitted this.
Yeah, that's cheating. You can't do that. Like, you come in with wrinkled gloves and someone else got fully padded gloves.
What I do know is that they fought 3 times, and 2 of those times he beat the shit out of him. That's just a reality.
Yeah. They give that, but to go on the rest of his fighting, when I saw him versus Otto Wallin, which is, I believe, a ranked number 54 in the world at the time, he got his whole head split open, and they should have stopped the fight. He was not looking great in that one.
And he fought. Right. And what did Mayweather say? A true champion wins under any circumstance.
I do understand that. I'm just going on how good he is. Now, beside those 2 that I just named, Wilder and Klitschko, now you really don't even have any top heavyweights that he's fighting. And he doesn't look good against the bums that he fight. Because if I ask, beside those 2, what are his big fights? There's no one you can name.
Those are his 2 biggest fights.
Right. One of them was 7 years ago, and it was one, as I said, one of the most boring titles in fights. He was 26. The guy he was fighting was 40 years old. At the end of his career, one fight out of retirement.
I'm gonna say this: if you fought Klitschko, you were fighting that way as well, because Klitschko got a hell of a right hand. There's a reason why his nickname was Dr. Steelhammer. So I don't care how old he was. One thing we know about boxing, no, it doesn't matter how old you get, you don't lose your power. We know that. So common sense says if you fight a guy who's known for being strong, who's known for having a great punch, even if he's 40 years old, you better be defensive.
Right. So this guy that's considered so good right now was 26, fighting a 40-year-old man, one fight out of retirement, one fight before retirement, and he was on steroids. And he fought him, and it was a super sloppy fight, like very horrible.
What I do know is he is the Ring Magazine heavyweight champion in the world.
Ring Magazine is a very racist magazine.
It may be, but they have one of the most respected boxing publications in the world of boxing.
That is a shame. And
we know Ring Magazine now is owned by Oscar De La Hoya.
Right. Ring Magazine don't put, like, you could be a champion in a division, have all 4 titles, and they still won't rank you. And you could be in a division with someone that's white, and they could have 2 losses and no titles, and they could rank higher than you.
I've never seen Ring Magazine have a guy who has all 4 of the belts and they not be ranked champion.
You ever heard of Devin Haney?
No, Devin Haney is ranked number 1. No, Devin Haney is ranked as a champion at lightweight, but they didn't have him in the pound for pound rankings because
that's what I mean.
Because pound for pound rankings is based on what? Based on who you fought. So to be a pound for pound, I know this. To be in the top 10 pound for pound means you have had to fought other fighters who are what? In the conversation of being pound for pound level. But that's the reality. And it makes
sense. How did Fury get on the list then?
Fury got on the list because he fought what? 2 of the top heavyweights of his generation. Klitschko, and then he fought Wilder 3 times, and he beat him. In fact, when he fought Wilder was ranked the number 1 heavyweight in the world. But Tyson Fury isn't ranked in the top 10 of the pound for pound rankings by Ring Magazine. And
he was up there. You ain't still up there. He was up there, and he should have came off because he said he retired this year.
I know this. He's not on the pound for pound rankings. I know this because.
But they had Lomachenko ranked. They had Lomachenko, who had no belts, ranked over Devin Haney, and they're in the same exact division. And they had Lomachenko ranked over Tank Davis, and they're in the same division.
Yeah, but Tank Davis haven't fought in the elite guys.
No, he didn't fight a future Hall of Famer and knock him out.
Who's the future Hall of Famer he fought?
Santa Cruz.
Oh yeah, but Santa Cruz is coming up in weight, man. Oh, listen, I got this up right now, and I'm gonna show it to you, because there's a lot that goes into, and we haven't got into boxing, but it's all good because I'm boxing, so it's all good. I'm loving the conversation, even though I'm supposed to have my ass in bed because I gotta be working in the morning, but that's quite all right. But so we see number 1 is Alexander Usyk. Number 2 is the homeboy from Japan. Terence Crawford is 3. Errol Spence 4. Canelo is 5. Lomachenko is 6.
Wow.
Bivol is 7. Josh Taylor is 8. I think Josh Taylor could have dropped from the rankings. Jamel Charlo is 9, which I agree with. And then, of course, Beterbiev is 10. So you see, Fury isn't in there. But the
good, he's out of there. He wasn't.
Lomachenko is in there because of what? The people that he's fought.
Who has he fought? I mean, when he fought them, the people he's going to get credit for, like Russell and all that, these guys were smaller weight. He's fighting dudes. He came out as a 135 where he was a lightweight, but what he did was come out, turn pro, and then go down and fight dudes at 126, and beating up dudes like Rigondeaux, who's actually 122.
Yeah. Now, I didn't like that. I didn't like him fighting old boy from Cuba. I was like that because you could see in the fight that he was actually 2 weight classes bigger than him. So I couldn't pay that any respect. I couldn't pay that any respect. I said, that's like me. So I don't know how much you weigh, but I weigh 223, right? That would be like me boxing against someone who's 185.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so when I saw that, in fact, the fight only went 6 rounds, but he didn't even look impressive in the fight.
Right. Right. I even looked at it. Right.
He didn't look impressive. You know what I'm saying? But I could understand Haney not being on the pound for pound because even though he has all the belts, he fought a guy who was considered a fringe contender who luckily beat Teofimo Lopez. I mean,
I wouldn't say that was luckily beat Teofimo.
If they fought 9 times out of 10, he would lose, but he beat him the time they fought, he actually beat him. And part of that is I think Teofimo Lopez, if he don't get his defense together, he's not going to go very far.
No, he's done. He was a hype job. He had to move up anyway, so he moved to 140.
Yeah, but I don't think he was a hype job, but I think this is the thing. When he was at lightweight, we had a couple of things take place. One, he was big for the weight class. Mm-hmm. He was big, physically big for the weight class, so I would argue he was a weight bully. And of course, the fact that he was bigger and more athletic. Like, did you ever play basketball?
Yep.
So you were growing up, like there might be a dude who's 6'3" in middle school, right? So you're like, damn, man, this dude averaging 30 a game and 15 rebounds. Then when he gets his ass to high school and he's going up against people his own size, and you realize he can't dribble, he can't shoot, he can't go to his left, right? And that's basically what happened once he's moved to 140. He fought a guy who was basically a journeyman, and dude was catching him all night with right hands. So you know when you try to fight elite guys with power, you know what would happen. But the issue was the fact that he was very athletic and at 135 and bigger than everyone. His punch carried more. Right. They really felt it. But now that he's moved up and he's probably going to have to go to 147, he's going to have a lot of problems because what? You can't just rely on your athleticism. You have to actually have the skill. You got to have your feet in the right place. You got to step off the line, move your head, dip under, feint. And he don't do a lot of that.
Right.
So I think that's going to be the issue. But the issue with Haney is the fact that the only names on his resume are fringe contenders and or guys who are significantly past their prime. Now he has great skills. He has great skills. I like Mayweather's boy from Baltimore.
Davis.
Davis, but he's 27 years old. He's in his athletic prime. He has yet to fight a top guy. Like, damn.
They keep saying it, right.
At some point, put his ass in there and see what happens.
Right, but when they're saying that, what top guy are they talking about?
Well,
you know what I mean? We understand he didn't fight Haney yet, but that's a build-up fight. But whatever people in the division, they keep saying he didn't fight. I'm like, I'm watching the division. It ain't a bunch of other people where he didn't fight Ryan. Ryan's not a top dude, and he'll get dusted.
But here's the issue. When he was at 130, they was like, fight low. They said, well, you could fight, they was talking about having him come up and fight Shakur. And now Shakur Stevenson went to 135, right? So you know things gonna be crack-a-lacking. Shout out to
right.
But the other issue was he, like, for example, when he went to 140, he fought that kid from Texas, and they was talking about he was fighting for the WBA belt. Everybody knows that Josh Taylor at the time was the unified champion. He had all the belts. He was fighting for a junior varsity belt against a guy that no one had actually even heard of. Right? So all I'm saying is The only guy that Gervonta Davis has fought that actually had a title, a real title, was the kid from Puerto Rico who just moved to 140 and had a draw with the kid from Ghana. Right?
Barrios. Barrios.
No, not Barrios. Not Barrios. Barrios had a junior varsity title. I'm talking about the kid. Let me see if I can pull this up. Let me see if I can pull it up. I can tell you who I'm talking about.
You said okay. I know he just beat Isaac Cruz.
I'm not talking about him either. I'm talking about.
You said he beat him in Texas.
No, I'm talking about Pedraza. Pedraza was the only guy
Jose.
that actually won an actual world title from.
Yeah, he destroyed Pedraza. That's the same Pedraza that bust up Lomachenko's face. Yeah, Lomachenko. He made Lomachenko's face mincemeat. Right. And Davis knocked him out in what, like 6 rounds?
He could fight Lomachenko, but Mayweather doesn't want him to fight him. He could fight Haney. Mayweather don't want him to fight him. He won't put him in there with any top guys. He won't.
What he was doing was building them. They building him right. That's why. I mean, look how they built him up. He is the number. Even though he don't have the belts like Haney has, he is the number 135 pounder. His makes all the money. His fights sell.
He's the number one draw.
That's what I mean.
But he doesn't have the resume to even say he's the number one fighter at 135.
Right, but
nobody at 135.
Right, but now I watch YouTube. Now you see the boxing scene on YouTube when those votes go out. When those votes go out, and they're asking everybody who their favorite 135er is. Tank usually win the polls.
Right, he might win the poll. Like for example, people might say Kobe Bryant's their favorite player, but he ain't better than Michael Jordan.
Right, but what we're talking about is see how they're doing the business. That's what Mayweather's doing. So when it's look like, oh no, he's not putting them, he's not doing this and that. It's like, yeah, but look what he's doing is so smart. Look at the buildup. He has a giant following now. He is the most
following. But I think this is the issue. They're protecting him because he's the only fighter on Mayweather's roster who was worth anything.
Right. Well, you got another young boy coming out that look pretty good too.
That's the issue. Yeah. But he got to fight somebody, man. I'm tired of him fighting these bums.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know what I'm saying? To a degree. I love his fights, though. I love his fight. I mean, Isaac Cruz is a bum. Like you said Isaac Cruz is a bum or Pedraza is a bum. Like, I don't know, bro.
They're let me say this, and I appreciate you asking that question because that was a bit hyperbole. So I'm going to back up for that. I appreciate you, brother.
Yes,
he's fighting B-level fighters. I believe that based on his talent, his athleticism, and his power, he is an A-level fighter. Okay, I believe Gervonta Davis is an A-level fighter. I'm tired of him fighting B-level fighters. I want him to get in there with another A-level fighter or someone that we believe is an A-level fighter, and I want to see him be great. Mayweather had to do that. At some point, Mayweather had to get in there with A-level fighters, even when he was the B side. He did it with when he fought Corrales.
Can I ask you a question? Yes, sir. Yep. Can I ask you a question though? When you're saying A-level fighters at 135, I'm looking for a name that you're talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna give you 3 A-level fighters at 135: Lomachenko, Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson. Those are 3 guys who are A-level.
Now look at that. Of course, he couldn't have fought Shakur because Shakur 130. Now I don't think he's gonna beat. I think probably Devin Haney will probably beat him. I don't think Lomachenko's no problem. I don't think Lomachenko's gonna want to fight him. Lomachenko, I don't even think is a top 5 lightweight, to be honest. I mean, he
top 5. Now that's hyperbole.
Nah, I don't. I'm telling you, I don't.
Name 5 fighters at 135. That's ahead of Lomachenko.
You just named 3 of them right there. You just named 3.
Okay, name 5.
Man, I can't think of 2 more at the top of my head because I'm laughing too hard.
I'm gonna give you the Ring Magazine rankings.
Right? Oh man, no, they're terrible, man. Ring Magazine, man. You see that, bro? Listen, if you black, you can't hardly get on that list if you black, man. It's a tough list right there.
I disagree because the whole time Mayweather was number 1 on that list.
That was before Oscar got a hold of it. It changed. It used to be Ring Magazine used to be real. For many years, it was real. For the last 10 years, it's been crazy suspect. If you look at that pound for pound list,
so this is what we see. We got Haney at the champion. Kambosos Jr. is ranked number 1 because he just lost the title. mean, but that's the reality.
Kambosos Jr. What did you just tell me about Kambosos?
Listen, if you are the champion and you lose the unanimous decision to the new champion, you're going to drop the number one. That's just common sense.
My brother, you just told me when he beat Tio, you said Tio lost to basically like a journeyman. You just told us to like a bump.
Say that.
And now he ranked number 2.
But he's ranked number 1 for a reason, because he just lost the title in what was a competitive unanimous decision. I don't think much of him, but I'm saying it makes sense to make the rankings that way. You kind of make the rankings based off of what their resume, not just who you think is the better fighter. It's based off of
that clearly doesn't mean that doesn't. No one should look at that and think that's correct. Like doesn't mean.
Number 2 is Lomachenko. Number 3 is Gervonta Davis. Number 4 is Ryan Garcia. Number 5 is Isaac Cruz. Number 6 is Joseph Diaz Jr. Number 7 is William Zepeda. Number 8 is Frank Martin. Number 9 is Michael Riviera, and number 10 is Gustavo Lemo. So you couldn't put 5 guys above Lomachenko.
Hold on, I didn't hear Devin Haney's name.
I just told you that Devin Haney is ranked number 3.
Oh, my fault. Okay. Yeah, I put Frank Martin. Definitely put Frank Martin in front of Lomachenko too.
Frank Martin hasn't even fought a
he don't even have to. You can, I mean, as a boxing fan, and I've got a lot of years being a fan, I kind of start to get an eye for fighters. You can kind of tell hype jobs from
Martin. I've watched him. One of the issues with Frank Martin, I watched him and I wasn't impressed, is that he is very stiff. Very stiff. He's extremely stiff. This is something I saw when I started. Okay, he has enough to be a prospect, but when he starts fighting A-level guys, the fact that he's limited in terms of his technical ability, that's going to be something he's going to have to show up. But once again, the boxing rankings are based on a person's resume at that weight, not the talent. It's based on what you've accomplished at that weight.
Yeah, even looking at that, when you look at Lomachenko at that weight, he struggled at 135, and they were thinking about moving him back down. Bob Irwin and them have been saying he's too small for the division. When he took
this is what they were saying. However, what I do know, if you want to be honest, that fight with Teofimo Lopez was a draw.
Nah, man, get out of here. He murdered Lomachenko against the turtle arms. He's scared. Every time he gets punched in the face hard, he gets turtle arms. His whole career been like that. He gets turtle arms. He hates to get punched in the face hard.
A boxing match is based on the rounds you win. Lomachenko won round number 2.
He didn't throw any punches in round 2.
Yes, he did. He outlanded him in round 2.
No way in the world, man. This dude didn't want to throw punches. He waited until the 7th round to start fighting.
Let me finish. I watched the fight 3 times. He outlanded him in round 2. Go back and watch it. He won round 2. He won round 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Wow.
7,
he almost got
8,
knocked
9, 10,
out.
and 11. Once again, you're not listening. 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. That's 5 in round 2. That's 6 rounds. No knockdowns. That makes it 6-6. Now, I know he got his ass whooped in the 12th round, but that made it 6 rounds to 6. They don't score. You don't get extra points for how many punches you land in a round. You only get extra points if you knock somebody down. This is a reality.
All right. Well, it looked like a clear beatdown, and pretty much it's known as a clear beatdown. I'm pretty sure the judges and everybody's seen it was a clear beatdown.
Anybody who is an objective observer of a boxing match knows.
I mean, Lomachenko is a favorite. Why would they let him keep his belt if they felt that way? They felt he took a beatdown.
I'm not getting into that.
He took a beatdown. And matter of fact, they had that.
As someone who was objective, and this is someone who was objective. I was rooting for Teofimo Lopez. I wanted him to win. I scored the fight myself with the sound off.
Wow.
And I had it 114. And I was still happy that he won because I wanted him to win and not Lomachenko because I felt like they was hyping him up because he was a white boy.
Yeah, but Loma struggles, man.
Well, for example, I'm an Andre Ward fan. I watched the Andre Ward fight, his first fight with
Kovalev.
Watched it live. I went back and watched it 4 times, sound off. Every time I had
he won.
13. I had him winning round 4, round 5, round 7, 8, 9, and then 11 and 12.
Mm-hmm.
That was 7 rounds to 5 because Klitschko only won round 1, 2, 3, round 6, and round 10.
Right.
So even though it looked like Klitschko was winning because he was, but once again, you had to count it round by round, round by round.
Right.
And so everybody was like, "Oh man!" If you even go to YouTube and look at the comments, people be like, "Man, what in the world going on, man? This is a robbery." Because what? When you score a boxing match, you have to score it by each round. And we all know what happened.
Klitschko won that. No,
he
Wood won
faded and gassed out at the end.
Right.
And then in the second fight, he got tired again, quick, fast, in a hurry, and ended up getting knocked out.
Yeah, them body shots. Yeah, man, them quick.
Yeah.
Acting like he got hit low when he really just quit.
When he wasn't getting hit low. In fact, there was times where he was getting hit with love taps and was still overreacting.
Right, trying to get a break, trying to get the ref to stop.
You know what I mean? So,
right.
But like I said, even though I'm a fan, I look at fights objectively.
I understand it, but look at Lomachenko versus. I mean, look at Pedraza. You just said Pedraza not tops like that. So how does he get a beat there? How does he get beat up like that? And then
still won.
And then Linares, you know what I mean? He won against Linares, but he lost most of the rounds. He's getting beat down again.
He did not lose most of the rounds against.
He did. He was losing on the cards. Look, you can Google the cards.
He was not. He was.
You can Google. You can Google the cards.
No, I can do it right now. I'm gonna do it right now because he was up on the cards. Now
you remember, and he got dropped. Remember, he got dropped.
I'm a betting man. You want to put some money on this?
Nah, man, I don't gamble.
Yeah, I'm telling you because I get something off you. I'm about to pull it up right now, and then we're gonna call it a night, and then we're gonna tap in Friday. But what
time you Friday? Got work Friday night.
I think I got it at 8 something. Hold on. We said Linares, right? Okay, here we go. I'm gonna share my screen.
All right.
Pull this up. Here we go. Here. There we go. So against Linares, it was 85-85. 86-84, 86-84. So one card had him down, one card had it even, and one card had him up.
All right. Yeah. So that's still, and that's like, okay. Now
so it was looking like it was going to be a split draw. If it would have went all the way, it looked like it would have been a split draw.
And again, Linares wasn't named in the top 10 or nothing. How is this number one dude struggling like that, getting dropped and struggling with dudes like Linares and Pedraza? Like, how do you do that and then get ranked so high?
At the time, Linares was ranked in the lightweight. In fact, at the time, Linares had a couple belts when they fought.
But we knew he was on the way down. Everyone knew that. You could look and see he leaked every fight. He was bleeding every single fight. You know that.
Actually, Linares was on a 13-fight win streak.
Man, Linares was on his way out. Even when you watch the fight, they say you know it because you know he's gonna bleed. He just started going through a thing.
Yeah, he was known for cutting up easily, but he was on a 13-fight win streak when he fought.
And since then, and ever since then, and it been all downhill. We knew he was on a cliff. That was a cliff. He was done. He was not a top fighter. Loma should not have struggled like that with him.
I agree. I think he's overrated. Personally, I think he's overrated. But what I am saying is based on what he's accomplished in that weight class, there's a reason why he's ranked where he is. If you are the former unified champion, you have 3 of the belts, right? And you lose in what actually was a competitive decision and you lose your titles, you're not going to go from being a champion to number 6? They're going to keep you in the top 5. That's just the reality.
No, with everyone else that you name, like, no, man, he should not be ranked over Tank. I don't care what
you're telling me. So you're telling me that a guy, Frank Martin, who has only fought C-level fighters, should be ranked ahead of Lomachenko, and Frank Martin hasn't even qualified for a title shot.
Well, I was saying as far as I'd pick up that he's better. Yeah, he's not I wouldn't say high in the rankings, but would I rank him as a better fighter? Yes. I'd rank him as a better fighter than I take him if they had to fight him and Lomachenko. I'm taking Martin every time.
He's not ready for that step up in class. He makes
right. I know he got some time. I know he got some time to build up. I know he's fresh and young.
He get hit too much. He makes too many mistakes to be. Don't throw you throw him in there with him. You gonna ruin his damn career. You know that. You gotta be honest. I could be.
He's young. Yeah, he's young. He's young. You know what I mean? And that's about it.
You throw him in there with Lomachenko, he's gonna be working next to you on Friday. Don't do that.
Yeah. But once again, that's
how a lot of people's careers get ruined because they have them step up too quickly. And I give an example. This brother, he was from Philadelphia. He won a gold medal in the '96 Olympics, at the same Olympics where Floyd Mayweather won a bronze. And he won a title like in his 14th or 15th fight. And right after he won the world title, they threw him in there with Felix Trinidad. David Reed is his name. He's from Philadelphia. And the brother was fast, he was slick and everything. But he wasn't used to going 12 rounds with someone as seasoned as the world champion Felix Trinidad. And what ended up happening, he was winning the first 6 rounds. He probably was up maybe 5-1. He even dropped Trinidad. You know, Trinidad was known for getting dropped early in the fight. And what ended up happening, after, well, you know what said, a championship fight doesn't start till round 7. And from round 7 to 12, he got the shit beat out of him. He got dropped like 6 or 7 times and it ruined his career.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
objective about this. You put that boy in there with Loma Chico, he gonna get his ass whooped right now.
I've seen people that's young like that also take people out like that too.
We're not talking
I've seen young guys. I've seen young guys come in there and beat people, and especially hype jobs like Loma. Loma is very skilled, but his chin, how many times he been dropped already? Like 3 times in his career?
No, I only know of one time of him getting knocked down, and that was against the one dude that we just mentioned.
Linares?
Linares.
Hold up. No,
Like I said,
no, he got 2 because Gary Russell Jr., that should have been a knockdown.
Gary Russell Jr. didn't knock him down. Right.
But it should have been kind of a knockdown.
Because like I said, I'm a very objective person. I don't engage in hyperbole. The reality of the situation is this.
Someone else dropped him. He got dropped by someone else too. His chin's wobbly.
Once again, all I know is what he was getting hit with cannons by Teofimo Lopez. He didn't go down.
He curled up. He wouldn't fight.
But here's the reality of the situation. If they put that boy Frank Martin in there with him now, he will lose. This is a reality.
Possibly. I'm still taking Frank over him.
Listen, Frank Martin isn't even good enough to fight for a title shot yet. He's not even that good yet. He needs to keep developing. He isn't even good enough to fight for a title shot.
I'd still take him over him. That's it. Just like I'd take Devin over Loma all day. I don't even think it'll be close. It'll be a complete shutout. I'd take Shakur Stevens over him.
I say that is because Devin doesn't have power. He doesn't. He does not.
But Loma does.
No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is you got to at least be able to keep the guy off of you. And
he got enough to keep him off.
No, he doesn't.
Oh, my Lord.
And the issue I have is I don't know if when he fights someone who is an A-level fighter like him, like he was so confident because he knew that the guy he's fighting it doesn't have the skill that he has. But
no one does.
But how will he respond when he's in there with someone? Because when you get to the A level, right? It's just like in college football. All right, you play Rutgers, you play Arizona State, but in a bowl game or the football national championship, now it's going to come down to coaching and execution. How do you handle the situation in which you're with a guy that when you hit him, he doesn't go anywhere? Right? How do you handle the fact that you're putting out your best stuff and the guy's making you miss? And the guy is able to counter you on occasion. How do you handle that? We saw how Zab Judah handled it, even though he was faster than Mayweather, even though he was bigger than Mayweather, even though he hit harder than Mayweather. He couldn't handle it. So a lot of guys are able to do well.
That was a battle.
Hold on, let me finish. A lot of guys are able to do well when they are front runners. But how do you handle the situation when you handle some adversity? We don't know how he responds to adversity yet. We don't know that.
Right, we know how Loma does. We know how he, but we do know how he reacts.
I think you said that you've boxed before.
Yeah, nothing like that. Yeah, not even. Yeah,
but
I've been in the ring. Yes, I boxed.
And I had my kids boxed before. There was a young man in the gym who was flashy. He was doing the mitts like Mayweather, everything. Right? He get into a fight against this white kid who wasn't as fast as him, wasn't as talented, but somehow the white boy got him up against the ropes. The black kid puts the earmuffs on, and the white boy just starts welling away. He's blocking the punches. The young man breaks down and starts crying. And my son looking at me like, what the hell? But he in the gym, I said, exactly. He couldn't handle adversity. It happened. I've seen it. Now, I've been in the ring before where I had a guy who was a pro from DC, shout out to Chocolate City, hit me with the left hand, cracked me with a haymaker, got me leaking. And I said, that's all you got, you punk MFer? People... That's what I'm saying. So we don't know until he handles it. We noticed with Mike Tyson, when he faced adversity, he fell apart. He got his ass whooped by Buster Douglas. He got his ass whooped by Holyfield. He got his ass whooped by Lennox Lewis. Right? So it's different. Some people, they could be gladiators, right? But if they face adversity, they fall apart. We don't know that yet about him. And what we do know is that Lomachenko, irrespective of what the situation is or what we think of him, because I think he's a bit overhyped, we do know that when he faces adversity, he acts like a fighter.
No. Yes, I don't see it. He curls up.
He acts like a professional boxer.
He curls up, man. He does it whenever he start getting hit hard in the face. Then he doesn't even want to initiate. He doesn't want to get in and fight. He sits out there like he did with Tio. He did that same thing with Salido. Once he start getting hit hard, he's like he punks out. He doesn't really want to sit there.
So let me say this: as someone who's boxed before, it's not called punking out if you're getting hit. The smart thing to do is to get out of the kill zone, reset, and then wait for you to have openings. That's right, stupid.
But he stays out. He stays out and never comes back. Like he does it, just like he did the first 7 rounds. Once you saw him, once he decided, oh no, let me fight. When you get to round 7 against Tio, then you see, oh, okay. Now when he stood in there in exchange, he was winning. He started winning those rounds.
And guess what happened? Bernard Hopkins did the same thing against Jermaine Taylor when they fought for the first time in July of 2005. When they fought for when Bernard Hopkins put his undisputed middleweight championship on the line against Jermaine Taylor, right? And he was going for his 21st title defense. Bernard Hopkins stayed on the outside of the fight and let him shoot his load for the first 8 rounds. And then the last 4 rounds, he came on and started throwing punches. It's called strategy. As someone who's been in the ring, that's not being a coward. That's called being smart.
But you notice,
if you're fighting someone who's younger than you, bigger than you, stronger than you, and faster than you, conventional wisdom in boxing says, let him shoot his load, and when he gets tired, take him to deep water and try to stop him. That's not being a coward. That's called being intelligent. You know why? Because I've done it before. I remember, so I'm 6 foot, 223 pounds. There was a time I was boxing a guy who was 6'4" and like 250. Okay? And I was like, I'm gonna let him tire himself out, and then I'm gonna stop his ass. And guess what ended up happening? Once he got tired, I stopped him. It would have been asinine of me, after 9, after 10, after 11, after 12, for me to go heads up with someone who got 4 inches on me in 25 pounds. It's called strategy.
Right. Well, his strategy was terrible for him, and he does it whenever he fights those heavy hitters like that, and people with longer reach. So you see what happens with him. And like I said, go back to look at him with people like Pedraza. You see what his face looked like after the fight. Top fighters don't come out the ring with their face looking like that. You know what I mean?
Overrated. But we also know when Andre Ward beat Kovalev, his face looked worse than Kovalev's after the fight.
Yeah, but he didn't move up. He was moving up in weight to fight Kovalev, though. That's like moving up a whole weight class to fight someone way bigger. Yeah, that's different. And his face wasn't that bad. He had the little bruise on the left side of his forehead. His eyes weren't swollen. Lomas, both his eyes were swollen, lumps all on his head. And then when they said about a rematch, he instantly turned it down.
When Andre Ward fought Kovalev, he already had 3 fights at light heavyweight. Okay, and what I don't know if you know this, but Andre Ward, when he won the gold medal in the Olympics in 2004 in Greece, and he's the last American boxer to win a gold medal in the Olympics, right? He won that Olympic gold medal at 178, which was light heavyweight, which is 3 pounds heavier than what they were fighting at in the pros, which is light heavyweight, and the pros is 175. So he was already used to fighting at that weight.
Right, and he wasn't busted up either. He just had you're gonna have that red bruise on the left side of his forehead.
His face was swollen and it was reddened. This is the reality.
Or swollen, reddened. Oh no, his eyes weren't swollen though, right?
No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you can win a fight and still win in your face. Like I always told people, I felt his defense was overrated. But what I am saying is that a smart person who knows that they don't have long arms, and you're fighting a shorter, taller guy, you stay on the outside, you either go. I remember when I was fighting the dude that was 6'4", and I remember when we first came out, he hit me with a 3-piece off the rip, bop, bop, bop. I'm like, oh, back up to against the ropes. I had to focus. Go, you either all the way in or all the way out. This is what my trainer told me. You either all the way in or all the way out. This isn't being cowardly. This is called strategy. This is called being smart.
I understand strategy all day.
This is how you have to fight if you're going against someone who has physical advantages over you.
The Matrix, we should be able to stand in there and get your shots off without having to stand outside and get beat up. Instead, he just stayed. So he stayed outside and just got his face punched. That's it. Like he stayed out there, was a punching bag for the first 7 rounds.
Once again, that's not realistic. For you to go up against a guy who's bigger than you, stand right in front of him in the pocket and not expect to get hit. That's not how it works. I can say this because I've boxed before. That's not,
I've boxed before too, so yeah, I
and
understand.
I actually boxed. I got trained. I had a trainer. I was in amateur fights the whole nine. That's not realistic. Like I remember, I used to be at a bar or something, and the white guys would always Mayweather fights like a punk. Why is he so defensive? I would tell them, go to a boxing gym, get in the ring, and I guarantee you, after one round, you're going to be asking the question: how do I keep him from hitting me? You're going to understand the importance of what controlling distance, feigning.
But he's not. But Slomo wasn't doing that. He's getting hit. He's standing on the outside getting hit. It's different. He's not doing what Floyd doing.
The point that I'm making is, a lot of people are saying, why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? As someone who's boxed before, I know it isn't that easy.
But if someone is boxed before, you see it. I mean, I don't understand how can you, like, you're looking at him take these beatings get beat on by dudes and that aren't ranked high like that aren't really top fighters like that.
Once again,
and this dude's being ranked high as hell.
Has physical disadvantages. That's why. That's why
he's not a pound for pound fighter, man. He shouldn't even be on the list. He had 2 losses in his first 18 fights.
Well, once again, now you're engaging in hyperbole. Right?
No, he does. That's for real. He got 2 losses in his first 18 fights.
There isn't a boxing head, a respectable boxing mind on the planet that would agree with the assertion that you just made.
I think there's many that would, and I'm on a lot of boxing channels that a lot of people do. So.
Once again, I said respectable. I come across a lot of people who talk boxing and really don't know what the hell they're talking about. Literally. Right. And I'm talking about someone who's been in the ring. I know what it's like. People say, well, Mike Tyson said, everybody got to play until they get hit. I said, I've been hit before and still won the fight. So, like I said, I can say this because I've done it before. I was never no world champion. I never had prospects of going pro, but I've done it before. And I know it's easier than it actually looks.
Right.
Easier than it actually looks.
He got 2 losses in the first 18 fights.
Once again, there are some guys who, guess what? You may say he's not ranked very high, but it may take a couple rounds for you to figure the dude out. A good example. So these are things that happen.
He got a lot. They got a loss against a 40-year-old dude with 12 losses on his record.
And once again, I watched that fight, and if you want to be honest, he actually won.
I did too. I watched it too.
He won the fight.
He did. He got beat down again. Turtle arm.
Fast going, and the dude was landing low blow after low blow after low blow, when the ref never said anything. You know this.
No, man, excuses. He took a major beat down, and he didn't want. Why didn't he get it? He could have rematched him. Why didn't he rematch him?
That's not an excuse. That is a fact. That dude repeatedly hit him low throughout the fight.
Did he got hit low and he had stopped fighting or something?
Well, once again, that's not what I said. Let me make this very clear.
I thought you maybe he got hit and he got injured, or he got something that was a disadvantage.
Let me make this very clear. I don't even like Lomachenko, right? I don't care for the guy. I believe he was a hype job because he was white. I don't like the fact how they were trying to make him be this great fighter, and I felt like they were trying to even throw dirt at Mayweather. But I also could be objective, right? In that fight, which I watched, he was hit low repeatedly, over and over throughout the fight. And he kept fighting. But this is something that actually happened. I don't have to like the guy to be honest. Right? I'll give you another example. This is something that took place. And I play chess. I'm a big time chess player. And I remember I was somewhere and some dude was like, we know chess was created in Africa. I said, no, it wasn't. The origins of chess, there was a game in ancient India, and that was an ancient, or what we would call an antiquity origins of chess, and then the contemporary origins of chess took place, I believe, in Western Europe, maybe even specifically England. I said, I don't have to lie or distort facts. I could be objective, right? This is the situation I'm talking about, being objective. I don't like the guy, but I do know that irrespective of me not liking him, he is a good fighter. I don't think he's as great as everyone makes him out to be, but I do know that irrespective of the fact that he's in these fights and he's going through these wars, he's winning. And oftentimes he's stopping these guys, even though he's struggling with them in the beginning of the fight. These are facts.
Yeah,
Right?
not not a top guy. Yeah, not a. I mean, usually the top guys, because I've watched boxing for years. It's usually not like that. Like you don't come out taking L's to old men and losing the dudes with 12 losses and getting beat up by B rank fighters and barely coming out at the end with a lucky win. Like,
well, I also see there's a number of things. One, there weren't lucky wins, right? Because there's these fights, like even with the Pedraza fight, he actually ended up stopping him, if I remember correctly. He knocked him down in the 11th round twice. That's not a lucky win. And his face. His style of fighting is what? Accumulation of punches. He wears you down late in the fight and he stops you. The second issue.
Pedraza is very weak, right? Pedraza had like 30-some fights at that point with only 7 knockouts. Like this dude's like one of the weakest punches in the whole division. Easy.
You're moving the goalpost.
No, I just wanted to add that in, that he's a very weak puncher.
The second issue.
But he left Lomachenko's face looking like Rocky too.
The second issue, when we had a conversation about that, yes, he lost that fight. However, we do know that was his second professional fight. And in his second professional fight, he fought for a world title and went 12 rounds.
Yeah, that's.
If you can name another fighter in the history of boxing that in a second fight as a professional they fought for a world championship.
What are the qualifications for that? What are the qualifications that let you get a title shot like that? Because I know a lot of black fighters, a lot of great black fighters, and I've never heard of that.
Moving the goalpost.
No, I'm just asking a question.
I didn't ask you about qualifications.
I know because you're making it like as a great accomplishment, and I'm like, how could someone accomplish that?
I didn't say it was a great accomplishment.
When you threw it out there, it made it sound like he did something no one else ever did. So I'm like,
what I stated was, I didn't ask. The respectful thing to do was to answer my question before you ask a question.
I didn't. What was the question?
The question was, name another fighter in the history of boxing that fought for a world championship in a second professional fight.
And I can't name one because no one's ever done it. But then I had to ask, and that's why I said I couldn't name one. And I said, well, wow, I've watched, all the greatest boxers in the history of boxing, and none of them have ever had that pleasure or ever had that, ability to just walk in and take a title shot so quick. He wanted it on his first fight too. He wanted it on his first fight, but I'm like, what's the qualification for a boxer to walk into boxing and automatically get a title fight?
And in his third fight, he beat Gary Russell Jr. for
who was a weight class, right? Who was a weight class lower than him, but he came. Well, Lomachenko came out as a lightweight, fought as a lightweight as an amateur 132. Lightweight at pro was 135. He came out. He fought Gary Russell at 126.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
did. That's what he's doing there. You're going down in weight. Yeah, so you move down in weight.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was the bigger guy because we all know Gary Russell Jr. is 5'3". But he's 5'3".
Right. So Gary even when they're doing that,
he's 5'3", and Lomachenko was 5'7".
Right.
So the accomplishment. It's the same thing that happened when he fought the brother from Cuba. He had
exactly
disparity that when he beats the guy, he's the greatest thing ever.
That's what I mean.
You're like King Kong. This is why I told you I think he was being overhyped.
That's what I'm saying too. And they use those kind of names, and it's like that's not even right there. But they're using them, and it's hard to argue with people because a lot of people don't really know that. So taking those two big ones off of him and looking at his performance against other fighters that I believe that are around his level, and you see that's where he's at. He's Linares. He's Pedraza.
This is what I hope happens. I hope Shakur, Haney, or Davis fight him and just get him out of there.
Right. Well,
this is what I want.
Me too.
This is what I want. Put one of those brothers in the ring and give that boy his work. I mean, you're for real.
You had to give it to him. And I know now those would be good fights. Even though I don't put him as high as them, but I do know those would be some good fights.
I think Shakur would do the best with him.
Technically.
Shakur is 5'8". He has a great reach, and Shakur is at all three of those brothers. He's the best at controlling distance.
Oh, right. His defense looked like Floyd or something, man. It's out of this world.
Definitely. I'm praying, and I'm not even a praying man. I'm an atheist, right? But I'm praying that he fights Lomachenko. Like I said, I felt like it was a hype job, right? I really do. I'm like, okay, I know the brother got skills. He's not a brother, but I know he got skills. He's won 2 gold medals. You can't get gold medals if you're a chopped liver, right?
Right.
But I said they need to look at who he's fighting, how he's fighting these guys, what weight he's fighting them at. Because I tell people all the time, when Floyd Mayweather fought Oscar De La Hoya, he had to fight Oscar De La Hoya at the weight
154.
He had to
Right.
fight De La Hoya wearing heavyweight gloves. He had to give De La Hoya everything because De La Hoya was the A-side, and he still was so great that he was able to overcome that.
Right. That was crazy.
You see,
All that he gave up. Right. All
right. So I tell people, I say, think about it when Floyd fought Corrales, right? Or Floyd fought Castillo, right? So we know this. When he went, I mean, he was 36 years old when he beat the shit out of Canelo. I mean, he made the dude look like he was a damn amateur.
Right.
And remember, it was Canelo's team that was calling for the fight. We know how to beat him. We get your dumb ass up.
People forget that, right? They forget that. Now it was a cherry pick.
So now they're trying to say, well, Floyd, he just beat a guy who was green. No. You called me out. And
exactly.
When
you had 40-some belts. You had like 40-some fights under your belt.
Right.
He had the same amount of fights.
When he fought Canelo was the Ring Magazine junior middleweight champion. When he fought him, he was the Ring Magazine champion, which we all know because you said you follow boxing. 154 was not Floyd's best weight. 147.
Right, of course. No, he
was actually fighting above his head when he fought. When he fought Cotto, when he fought Oscar, and when he fought Canelo.
Yeah, someone else too. He went up. We fought at 152.
No.
Yeah, Canelo.
He had 2 fights at junior middleweight. He only had.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It was Canelo at 152 catch weight.
Yeah. So this is one of those things. But I could be objective, right? I could be objective, and so I think that's the big thing for me, even on my channel, is oftentimes we touch on some hot button issues. We touch on some very sensitive topics. But for me, the focus is on being objective, right?
Yes, sir.
Irrespective of the situation, right? I like Anthony Joshua. The brother looked like he was created, like he won a genetic lottery, right? But we know limited in terms of his stamina and his chin, right? This is just a reality. Many people like Deontay Wilder. He's a brother. He won a bronze medal in the Olympics. He was fighting because his daughter had a situation, a medical issue, blah, 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 blah. But we also know what? He's extremely inarticulate. And we also know that he lacks boxing skill, right? And
I love him as a boxer. It's one of my favorite fighters of all time.
But he doesn't have a lot of skill.
Not a lot of heavyweights have. But
he's a great puncher, but he's not a great boxer. He's a great puncher.
This is true. But when you look at statistically, right, over the years, he's been one of the most accurate punchers in all of boxing. He is one of the least, and he's one of the least hit boxers in all of boxing.
Well, once again, I would have to disagree because I've watched numerous fights of his where he was losing every round and then just landed one punch and dropped the guy.
I've watched most of his fights.
When he fought Ortiz the second time, he was losing every single round until he dropped him in the 7th round. There's
a statistic that CompuBox has, but you have to go look under it's under Floyd Mayweather when they're talking about his accuracy. But when you look up under there, what you're going to see is the second most accurate puncher who lands the most jabs. But this is from a few years ago. Would be Wilder, even though he's not the most. It doesn't look the most pretty, but he's least hit. He's less hit. He was less hit than Anthony Joshua, less hit than everybody but Fury by one punch, and he land more jabs in a punch in a
I'm looking
fight.
this up right now, and your numbers are wrong. And
sir.
I have to show you.
Okay, pull your numbers up. I'm telling you right now.
Yes,
not
Fury
only that,
out of boxing lesson. Absolutely, he did.
I'm saying overall, we're looking at. I'm not talking about that. All I'm talking about right now is the overall. We're talking about Deontay Wilder's skills, and I'm saying that statistically.
And what I'm gonna say this once again. I can be objective. I can remove me liking someone from saying
me too
the best.
Right. Okay.
I can say I like Kobe Bryant more than I like Michael Jordan. I like Scottie Pippen more than I like Michael Jordan. But I know Michael Jordan's the better basketball player.
Right. I'm talking statistically though. For a person that's supposed to not be able to fight, how are you landing more jabs than people that can fight? How are you less hit?
Most accurate jabber, Gennady Golovkin, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder is number 3. So I'm gonna tell you why.
Even when you look at that, and that's all of boxing. So the guy with no boxing skill. Yes, but I just wanted to let's look at that for a second. This is every division, right?
Yes,
and that's included. How could he be that high if he doesn't have any skills?
Well, let me answer the question. So there's a couple issues. One, he's very athletic. The second issue is against everyone he's fought, except for Tyson Fury. He has a reach and a height advantage.
Where is Fury's name?
You ask me a question, I'm going to answer it. Okay, very simple. In boxing, I know this because I've boxed before. If you have a reach advantage and a height advantage, it makes it very easy for you you have a higher probability of landing your jab. This is a reality. He is a very athletic person, but he's not a very skilled individual.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when he would fight guys, they would stay on the outside rather than rushing in because of the fear of getting hit with the right hand. This is a reality. But anyone who has objectively watched him fight has watched him fight numerous fights where he's fighting guys. He loses every round, and then he lands the big right hand and knocks the guy out, and that's it. He's even said it himself. I only have to be perfect for 2 seconds.
That's what he said. He only has to be perfect for 2 seconds. But in all actuality, I know what you're saying. You think you're seeing. What is happening is that he's landing more jabs than almost every single person in boxing. He's pretty much the number one. He's up there. He's what? 1 percentage point out. He's 1 percentage point out of number one. The guy who has no skills.
Hold on. And also, part of that has to do with the quality of people he was fighting. So many people.
He's fought a mini-fought type. He's fought many top fighters.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. I've watched him.
Once again,
he has 10 title defenses. He's fighting number one contenders.
He was not fighting number one contenders because for the duration of his title reign as a WCBC champion, his number one contender, was the Dylan White.
No, that was way at the end.
No, brother. I'm telling him, giving you facts. Now I'm going to make this.
You're giving it away at the end, man. Dylan White becoming number one, and just thinking that's one of his WB
3 years. He was a number one contender for over 3 years. If you don't believe
and what? No, that's his claim. But Wilder had the belt. For over 5 years.
Right, King of Kings. Wilder was losing lots of fights until he lands a big shot. This is true. So here's the issue.
No, that's his numbers. We're talking about numbers and skills. When I said he lands, who is one of the best? Who is one of the top jabbers in boxing?
Once again, you can't overtalk me.
I know, but it's when I try to ask questions or like my thing, I feel like it's getting cut short.
And when I start answering it, you start talking again.
Well,
once again, here's the situation. When he lost, when I told people he was going to lose to Tyson Fury, and I told him not only would he lose, but he would get his ass whooped. People said, well, how is it possible that he was 40-0 with 39 knockouts if he isn't a very skilled boxer? I said, it's very simple. It's called matchmaking. When you are a boxer and you become a professional fighter who actually they believe could become a star, they put you in there with guys that you should beat, right? And the hope and prayer is that you develop enough as a fighter and as a boxer and skill-wise that when you actually fight a guy
who's the better jabber then? Would Wilder be the better jabber or would Fury be the better?
You can't cut me off on my show. It's not going to happen. So as I was stating, the hope and prayer is in boxing that when you finally fight a guy who is an A-level opponent, you have developed enough to where when you fight the guy, you can win, and the promoter can do what? Make his money back from all the money that he invested. This is how boxing works. The reality of the situation is, you actually follow boxing media, he was being criticized during his title reign for not fighting guys who were highly ranked in the standings, in the WBC standings. We also know that the reason why he fought Luis Ortiz was because they knew that even though Ortiz was a good boxer, they knew that he was very old and that he wasn't athletic enough to really cause Wilder problems. Wilder is probably the hardest puncher in the history of the heavyweight division, but he is not a very skilled boxer. And as I stated before, part of the reason why he landed a lot of jabs was because of the level of competition he was fighting. Because when he fought someone who actually could fight, it wasn't even close. He got the shit beat out of him 2 out of 3 times. This is a reality, right? And like I said, I'm not a hater in the game. I'm objective. Irrespective if I like the guy or not, he is not a good boxer. And like I said, he's able to land a jab because he's 6'7" and taller than everyone else that he fights, except for Tyson Fury. This is why he was able to land a lot of jabs. He was fighting guys who didn't have great head movement, who were technically flawed and limited in skill. But when he fought a guy who actually was what was not that life, he got his ass whooped. We can say the same thing about Miguel Cotto. He lost the fight. And then he came back. He fought 3 guys who were like B-level fighters, where he looked great. And then he went into a fight with Canelo Alvarez, and he lost pretty bad. This is what happens. They build you up, make you look good against guys who are tailor-made for you, so that hopefully you develop enough that when you fight a real guy, you actually have the skill set to actually win. This is how boxing works. Right? I know boxing.
Okay, so you know that he still would be ranked one of the top boxers in the heavyweight division. But when I get back and say all the advantages you say that Wilder have, and that's why he lands so many jabs, the question is, then why can't Fury land jabs like that? Why isn't his statistics up there if he's such a better puncher and he's more skilled? Why statistically it doesn't show up on the board? When you look for power punches.
Here we go. You ask me a question, and then when I'm about to answer, you start talking again. You can't overtalk me on my show. You ask me a question, now let me answer. So there's a couple things. One, Fury doesn't actually use his jab much when he fights. What he typically does is uses his jab as a range finder to throw the right hand or the left hook. The second issue is what? What matters is he wins all of his fights. Irrespective if he lands a lot of jabs or not, he wins his fights.
Okay, so my next question is, who lands a higher percentage of power punches? Who? In boxing. I just want to see if it's the unskilled guy or one of the skilled guys.
Okay, I'm gonna show you because I got it up right now. All right, and everybody can see this. We have Terrence Crawford, number 1, which many people believe between him and Usyk as the number 1 fighter in the world. Second is Canelo Alvarez. Third is Vasily Lomachenko. Deontay Wilder's 4th. And
How is Wilder? I thought he sucked. So these guys you just named are super skilled. These are master boxers. What is the dude with no skill? How is he up there with them?
Once again, as I stated before. Right, and I'm almost stating this ad nauseum now. Part of this is based on what? The level of competition. When you have a promoter who is developing you into being a world champion, you fight against guys who are what? Tailor-made for you, easy to hit, don't have the foot speed or the ring IQ or acumen to not get hit with punches. This is how people are developed.
I'm thinking you're being either you don't remember or you're being disingenuous.
We know this because when he fought a real guy, not only did he lose, he looked like he didn't even belong in the ring with him. This is the reality.
Now let's go look at his record and see the last 10 people that he fought and see what their rankings were. How about that? And then you could pull up the last 10 of Tyson Fury's opponent and look at their rankings.
Okay.
And see who really been fighting high quality fighters.
Okay, no problem. No problemo. Pull it up right now.
Because he cleared out that top 5.
No, he didn't.
Real nice.
No,
yeah, real nice.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. He walked right through him.
Hyperbole. You're engaging in hyperbole.
No, I'm just being honest with you.
Okay.
Let's look at it.
Dominique Brazil.
Yeah, what was he ranked? When they fought, was it number 2? Number 1?
No, he was not number 2.
Okay, what was he ranked?
It doesn't have his ranking here, but I know he wasn't number 2. Then he fought Tyson Fury. That was a draw. So Romain Stavone was a 3-star guy. Gerald Washington was a 3-star guy, a former football player for USC. He was a former defensive end. Chris Areola was a 3-star guy. These are all his title defenses. Arthur Spivak, he's from the Eastern European. He was a 3-star guy. Johan Dupas was a 4-star guy. Eric Molina was a 3-star guy. This is another title defense. Romain Stavone, that's when he won the title, was a 3-star guy. So once again, as I stated, he wasn't fighting top guys when he was defending his title. This is just not true. Now I know these things because, like I said, I am a boxing aficionado. I have a subscription to Ring Magazine.
Each of those fighters when he fought him, what was the ranking of Brazil? It's a decent question.
Like I told you, He was Dominique Brazil when he fought him. He fought him after he had the draw with Tyson Fury. He was a 4-star fighter. But he wasn't a top fighter.
You said after, say that again?
He fought him after he had the draw with Tyson Fury.
He fought Dominic Brazil, and Brazil was ranked what?
He was ranked as a 4-star fighter. Let me see here. Because he got knocked out on both of his Dominic Brazil got knocked out on both of his title attempts. Both times he fought for a title, he got knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
So he's never been considered a top guy.
What do you think he was ranked though?
Because
we can pull it when they fought. If you just pulled up Boxing Rec, you could look right on it.
No, I'm looking. I'm trying to pull it up right now. My internet is giving me some problems.
All right, because you'll see, I'm not hyperbole here. He got a lot of people that's ranked in the top 5. Ortiz was ranking, yes sir. Ortiz was ranked in the top 5 when he fought him.
Ortiz.
Nope. So was Brazil. He cleared him. He was, man.
No, he wasn't. All right, so hold on. Let me pull this up because I know better. Let's see. Here we go. Because he got knocked out by Anthony Joshua too. Hey, where we at here? When did they fight?
He got knocked out by Joshua after Wilder knocked him out.
Yeah, I know.
Wilder, he was undefeated when he came in the ring with Wilder.
Let's see here.
He got knocked out instantly.
When did they fight? What year? Let me see if I could go back here. See.
I'm gonna say 20.
No, it's 2019. 2019. So he fought him in 2019. May 18th, 2019. Okay. No, actually, he fought Anthony Joshua first. He fought Anthony Joshua in 2016, got knocked out. Then he fought Wilder in 2019.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's see here. I know they got it here. Okay, yeah. So let me see if I can pull this up because when I'm looking at it, it has Wilder ranked number 3, and they have Brazil's ranking as not applicable. So let me see if I can pull this up for you. And this is on Boxing Rec.
And that's the year they fought. He was ranked number 3 as a champion.
As
the champion.
Yes. I'm not making.
How are you ranked number 3? You don't get ranked when you're the champ.
Well, you asked me to go to Boxing Rec. I went to Boxing Rec.
Come on, man, but you know a champ doesn't get ranked. How you gonna be ranked in your division? I mean, in your thing when you're the champ.
You asked me to bring this up, and I did.
Yeah, I want right. Then
so you can't get mad at me because I'm citing your source, and they don't have him.
You should have been all right. You should have been able to click. I can't see it, but you should be able to click right on to see the fight, or even go to Wikipedia. One of them, just pull it up and look where the rankings are, man. For them to say he wasn't ranked, that don't to say it's not applicable. You know, it's a ranking on him.
I'm telling
you already had a title fight. You already know there's a ranking on him.
This is what it says, and I'm not making this up. I'm trying to see if there's another because I had to put this up on Safari, not on Chrome.
Because I'm sure you're not saying you watch boxing. I know you're not saying, oh no, when Dominic Brazil fought for the title, he was they unapplicable, but they only had no ranking.
This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pull up 2019 heavyweight rankings, and hopefully it will have that in there.
And you got to go to the division that they in too. And they'll be ranking WBC, WBO. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. So for Wilder at that point to have had the belt for about 4 years at that point to be ranked number 3 would be ridiculous. Like they had the belt for 3 years.
Well, what's it? So as you see here, they don't have him in the top 10 at when they fought in 2019. They had Wilder 2nd, Fury 3rd, Ortiz 4th, Dylan White.
Who is that? What is this ranked under? What is that under? What organization?
All right, so let me pull it this way. I'll go WBC. 2019 boxing rankings. Okay. Is this 2019? It says March. So yeah. So this is March of 2019. They fought in May of 2019.
Yeah, number 4 looked like Dominic Brazil. That's a top 5. That's a top 5 heavyweight.
And he was a top 5 heavyweight in that boxing for the WBC, but he was in top 5 heavyweight in the world.
Yeah, he was top 5 in WBC. Well, he's the top 5 heavyweight.
Top 5
and then I see Luis Ortiz in there at number 3. He beat him. He beat
Right.
Luis Ortiz, right? So these are top guys, top 5 guys.
They're not top guys overall. They were top guys for the WBC, but they weren't top guys overall in the world. That's the reality.
All right, and I also saw.
We know this because they don't even have Anthony Joshua ranked in there. Anthony Joshua was number 1 in the world. So like I said, this is the issue.
So you're saying he ain't was he ranked or not? We saying in his organization he's fighting top people. So you're saying WBC at that time didn't have quality top heavyweights? Did you see anyone on that list? There's a list of 15. Did you see? Yes, because there's a kid. I have to add on to it because there's 15 names on it, and I just want to know which ones you thought were better or ranked higher than him that he should have fought.
This is what I'm going to say. You could be ranked high in a particular belt for the particular belt, but your ranking for that belt may not oftentimes be equivalent of what your ranking is in the world. So, for example,
can you Google the world rankings at the time then?
Yes. 2019 rankings. 2019 annual rank. Okay, got it. So let me pull this up. Wow. I think this is that's not it. Here we go. All right. So we go to heavyweight, and Brazil isn't in the top 10.
So who do we have on here? I see Luis Ortiz in there.
Right. We're talking about Brazil, right?
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm just looking at some of the names in there. All right.
Once again, you could be ranked high for a particular belt, but that doesn't mean that you're ranked high in terms of the world ranking.
Yeah. Because also what I was doing when I was looking, I also was trying to find the guys that Fury had beat that's on this list.
Okay. Fury's beating Wilder. He's beating White. He's really beating. Those are the 2 guys I see on here right now. But like I said, and I think I made my point rather clearly that you could be ranked high for a particular belt because part of that has to do with paying licensing fees and the type of relationship that your promoter has with, of course, that belt, right? But that's not equivalent of what your ranking is in the world.
So he beat Dillian White, and White was ranked number 4, and Wilder beat Ortiz, who's ranked number 5, twice.
Once again, we're talking about Dominique Brazil. This is the guy that you want to look up.
Right, but I also wanted to see, as we were in there, just to seeing more evidence of who other people that's supposed to be so great fought or did not fight.
I never said these guys were great.
I know. Well, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to see that anyone else who was so superior boxer who has fought much tougher fighters, I wanted to see if those tougher fighters...
Anyone who's even a casual boxing fan has watched the Deontay Wilder fight and knows this man isn't very skilled. A casual boxing fan knows that when he throws punches, he leaves himself wide open. The issue why many people don't take advantage of that is because of his power. You have to have a lot of courage to get in there with a guy who, if he hits you one time, you're going to be laying on the canvas with your leg twitching. And be able to make him pay for the mistakes that he's making.
Sound like something they used to say about Rocky Marciano. Right.
No, they never said that about Rocky Marciano.
Yeah, they said he wasn't skilled. He just brute knocked you out.
No, what they said about Rocky Marciano is that he was extremely strong and that he could take a lot of punishment and that he had a great engine. He had great stamina. That's what they said about Rocky Marciano.
He's known for knocking people out.
And we also know he only had six
fights, right? And against old, washed-up fighters mostly.
Yes, and everyone who knows that all the guys he fought were past their prime when he
fought. I know that, but they brag about it, knocking him out. That was the whole thing. They brag about how he's knocking people out. It wasn't about how skilled he was. That was my whole thing. It's like it's not usually right. It's not a knock. They don't put a lot of knock. They usually don't on heavyweights having lack of skill. But as I said, it's weird that the guy with lack of skill lands so many jabs and such a high percentage of his punches. It's like, okay, it's like not being good on offense, but you're putting up the most. You're saying he's not fighting top fighters, but he is.
Once again, you're glossing over the facts. Like, we're gonna look at the facts and not the hype. The reason why he has such a high connect percentage is because he was fighting what? He was fighting guys who weren't very good. This is a reality.
Those fighters are good. Those fighters are good. You just say Ortiz isn't good and he's ranked top 5 in the world.
You cannot overtalk me on my channel. Doesn't work that way. All the people in the comments have even agreed with me. And I would argue that they're just casual boxing fans.
And that's why, look at because of propaganda.
Again, you're cutting me off again. If he was as good as you say he was, he wouldn't have got his ass whooped by Tyson Fury twice in a row. That wouldn't have happened. If he was as good as you say he was, he wouldn't have got his ass kicked. If he was as good as you say he was, he wouldn't have been out there looking like the get hit man. This is the reality. Just like I tell
people. And the reality is speaking of numbers. And the numbers are the numbers. He held his title. He held the title 5 years straight.
And the numbers are he lost twice in a row. That's what matters.
The numbers are he has a 10 fight. He defended his title 10 times in a row. And only 6 other fighters, only 6 other heavyweights in the history of boxing has ever done it.
And that's because he was facing bad.
He's held his own. So all the time, no one could fight him. No good fighters. But Fury can't because. So what kind of competition is Fury fighting that he can't make a run like that?
Once again, we're not talking about Tyson Fury.
Well, anyone else, pick one of the good ones. Pick one of the good ones. No, my question is, if his accomplishments mean nothing and anyone can do it, but no one else is doing it but him.
Once again,
he's not skilled.
You can't overtalk
but he lands more jabs.
You can't overtalk me.
He's not skilled.
If he got hit, he lost 2 fights in a row when he got his ass whooped.
He lost 2 out of 40-something.
And once again, when he finally fought a real guy, he looked like he didn't belong in the ring. These are the facts. The fights weren't close. The fights
his gloves, and his gloves was real suspect. And a guy who had no power all of a sudden has power.
Once again, so now we got the excuses. So he lost because he cheated. Okay.
Well, we know there was questions. We questioned the gloves.
There were no questions.
It was questions.
They weren't.
It was questioned before the fight. You can look. If you know boxing, you watched it. And you know you watched the gloves, and you know they argued about the gloves. They argued about the gloves. They didn't want to let him get in the ring with those gloves.
He won fair and square.
That's your opinion. But they were questioned about it, right?
You know, here's the thing. When I was whooping people's ass in the ring, they said the same thing about me. His gloves might be loaded. Nah, motherfucker, I can just hit hard. I just whooped your ass.
Right. Well, they didn't say his gloves might be loaded. We said the gloves, you see what kind of special gloves they have for him? And why were they wrinkled?
All I hear is excuses. Excuses
do boxers usually get in the ring with wrinkled ring? Are they usually allowed to get in the ring?
Excuses are tools of the incompetent.
You can either answer the question or you can ignore it. Do the boxers usually get allowed to get in the ring with wrinkled gloves?
Once again, excuses are tools of the incompetent. He lost.
And if you do not answer the question, it's because you either are afraid of the truth.
I don't believe his gloves.
You're just trying to omit
his gloves. He got his ass whooped.
They showed it. I mean, did they not show it? Did they not discuss it? Did they not discuss it? They talked with the organization. They brought them down. They looked at the gloves. They said, "What's wrong with these gloves?" They said, "Look at all the wrinkles in them. Where's the pattern in the gloves?"
Did he lose?
Yes, he lost, but I'm asking about the gloves. But if you don't have any integrity, then don't. You know what I mean? Okay.
He got his ass whooped, so that's it. Hey, you all have a great night. Appreciate you all logging on. Make sure y'all hit that thumbs up button, subscribe. I'm gonna see y'all on Friday. And at the end of the day, Deontay Wilder got his ass whooped twice, and he looked like an average in the ring with a real guy.
It's emotional, but it's all right.
It ain't emotional. It's an
emotional response, bro. It's all right. It's an emotional response, but it's all right.
Emotional.
It is no. You didn't want to. You know the gloves were wrinkled. That's it. They were, and you know you don't get in the ring like that.
And guess what? And no boxing commission believed it. Not one. And
they look right at it though.
Even they allowed it.
But it's the same. It's the same. But we're going back to racism and how that stuff dealt with. If you know boxing, but yes, because that's what it is. When you're dealing with that, that's what you're dealing with, and that's what it is, man. That's what it is, bro.
So all those
the swears now, man. The demeanor changing, bro. Professionalism. What happened?
Hold up. So you telling me that all the punches that he got hit with was because of racism, not because he couldn't move his head out the way?
It's because he's getting hit. For one, he's getting a lot of hit with rabbit punches and rabbit punches with a dude.
So it wasn't because
it's with a lot, because when you're allowed to cheat, and once you're cheating and allowed to hit somebody behind the head with a damn a glove that will hardly no pattern in it. Yes. Anyone knows that's when you hit somebody to take them off their equilibrium. You said you box. And you know getting hit behind the head is an easy way to knock someone's equilibrium off. And you see that happening in the fight.
And guess what? It never happened to me because I knew how to move out the way.
I mean, you could say you moonwalking on the moon right now, and but I mean, it's just you saying it. It doesn't.
Being honest.
It could have always happened to you, though. You're just saying it. I can't tell if you're being honest or not. It's just you saying it.
I got footage of me sparring on my Instagram.
Then you just chose not to go. You could have went all the way pro and been the greatest, and just chose not to.
I never said that. In fact, I said I had a modest amateur career. I said that early in the broadcast. I said I had a modest.
So sometimes your head was on that line.
That's what I said. I said I had a modest amateur career. And I said that the last time I got in the ring, when I was much older, it didn't go too well for me. That's what I stated. So I've never made these outlandish claims that I was the next Sugar Ray Robinson.
Oh, I thought you said something about your head never being on the line.
But I did say is I knew, because I went through the actual training, I knew how to control distance. I knew how to feint. I knew how to get my head off the line. But however, when I was 35 and I was on the downside of my prime, particularly athletically, and I didn't have the athleticism I had, I wasn't as quick as I used to be. That's when I started getting hit a lot. But common sense, when you go into a boxing gym, they're gonna put down a piece of tape. They're gonna tell you walk that line, and they're gonna work on basic fundamentals from the ground up, from feet up, about how to throw a punch and get your head off the line. Those are basic fundamentals that Deontay Wilder doesn't have. But because he
doesn't get hit.
However, he gets hit all the time.
No, he doesn't. You could Google that one too. Pull that up. Who gets least hit? Who gets hit? He's one of the least hit boxes. He's one of the least hit boxes. I know he's supposed to not have skills.
I didn't see it against Tyson.
I hear all that, but when you look at the numbers, they don't match. It don't match.
It didn't happen against Tyson Fury.
Okay, but the numbers don't match. The claims, I hear the claims, but when I say get to the everything changed. When you look at the actual numbers, you see, he has no defense. He always gets hit. No, look at the numbers.
He was the get hit man.
Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers and come back again. No, he's one of the least hit. He's one of the least hit.
In both fights, he was teeing out.
You keep it. Yeah, he got a 40-something fight record, buddy. You just can't keep using those and say that's the only way he's right. When I'm telling you that,
he actually fought a guy in his prime who was actually a real boxer. He got his ass whooped.
And everybody else weren't real boxers. That's like, it's not real, man. It's not real. So somehow he's the only dude in boxing that can only fight weak fighters. Like that doesn't make sense. And none of that makes sense. He's fighting top dudes. He's fighting top dudes. And he's the most avoided fighter in the heavyweight division for years. Even with a title, he's the most avoided.
Bobblehead. You are absolutely
all of that. You can say all that. It doesn't take away from the fact of the things. And your boy defended his title once. My man defended his title 10 times. Only the greats. Only the greatest.
You can't overtalk him. He got his ass whooped. Why? Because he couldn't move his head off the line. In fact, I remember he even stated that one of the reasons why he lost the fight was because he had that heavy suit on when he walked into the ring. Then he said that his legs were gone. Then he said it was something in the gloves. Then he said that his trainers were actually listening to people in the crowd, but is actually trying to help him. So he came up with all these excuses because he got his ass whooped. But now my man's is saying it's racism. But y'all know what it is. Always bet on black. I got to go to bed because I got to get up and go to work tomorrow and pay these bills. But that man lost that fight because he wasn't a better fighter. Had nothing to do with racism. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Peace. See y'all Friday.